Dear student, welcome back to chapter E4, E5. Now, this is probably my favorite chapter, and because I believe that here I have a quite special and very fresh idea. So let's get into it. So E4, E5, well, obviously in chess, um, it is always it has always been historically very common to make the same move as your opponent does in the first move. So let's say if I go d4, d5 is always very common, and the same with c4 and knight f3 as well. So e4, e5 uh, is the strongest move for black, if you ask me. It is obviously the most solid approach, and nowadays there are many good lines that are possible to play for black in the main Rui Lopez and Berlin defense. So for that reason, E5 is extremely popular. But in this course and in this chapter, we are going to cover something really fresh and something that I really like as well. Um, I'm talking about the main lines. So Uh, we are not going to have the Berlin defense. We are not going to have the Berlin endgames. We are not going to be very deep and find some new solutions in Rui Lopez. No, none of that. We are going to have something really fresh, and we'll get to that point. But for now, let's cover some moves after knight f3. I'm recommending knight f3, and it is obviously the best move, just attacking the e5 pawn. And here there are, I believe, four moves. And those are knight c6, which is the main move. Knight f6, it's called Petrov defense. It's known as a extremely solid approach for black. So if you guys are interested in being solid with black, you can really you can study Petrov defense. And d5 and d6. Those two are not really the most common moves, but I believe that if specifically if we are playing blitz games, d5 needs to be covered because it is mostly known as a blitz weapon, and I myself face this move a lot. So I think we should know at least what are we supposed to do and how we should react. I think for some of you, it's probably the first time that you see d5 move here, and that's okay. But it's good to know that it's not a good move. Which we are just going to cover a couple of important moves, and to make sure that you will get a good position and you will have a good chances to win the game after d5. So the point of d5 is that after ed, which is the main move, e4, and black wants to attack to our knight, and there is also a queen d5, which I believe is not really a good move because it basically gives us a chance to develop with the pieces very actively. So I think we should start with the queen d5. So let's start with the queen d5. Yeah, it does not suit with the d5. d5 is more like something active. So you want to go e4. But again, it also does not equalize. So let's cover queen d5 first. Knight c3, attacking the queen, obviously, and forcing them to go back. Queen e6. And now, why queen e6? Because let's say if black goes to queen d6 here, we will develop our bishop to c4. And I mean, our bishop is perfectly placed, and we'll just go castle, rook e1, and attack to e5 pawn, and all our pieces are developed. And it is simply very hard to understand what black is trying to achieve here, because they basically made two moves with the queen. Usually, that's not a good idea in the openings to move your queen a couple of times. That's not really good. So in this case, it's a perfect example. As you can see, we have developed 3 pieces, and all black pieces are simply just stuck there, and they are not developed. And now we have ideas such as knight g5, attacking on f7, and like it's already hard to defend. So for that reason, black needs to go queen e6. And now you may think that how are we going to develop our bishop since c4 square is covered, right? And for that reason, we give this check. Now, if black just makes a simple developing move, we'll go short castle. We'll go short castle and rook e1, attacking e5 pawn. And later on, if black defends, we can push d4. But we'll get to that as well. So c6 and bishop a4. Now, as you can see, we are doing the same idea. We just want to move the bishop back to b3 and then go short castle. And later on, we can go rook e1 and push d4 and open up the whole position. Again, I think that it's just simply winning for white. And it is, most importantly, it is very easy to play as white. As black, it is very hard because you have to find a good way to develop all your pieces. Yet, with a perfect play for white, I don't think it's possible to equalize because white is simply way ahead of the development. So this was queen d5 here, which is not a good move. E4 is the theory, is the main line. But again, it's not equalizing. And here is the most important moment of this d5 line, I believe, is that you have to remember what to do here as white. Otherwise, you might get in trouble. So here, as white, we should go queen to e2. Pinning the king. Now, black is unable to take on f3, obviously. And if you take on d5 with the queen, then I will simply put my knight on c3, attack the queen, and attack the pawn at the same time. And with the next move, I will capture on e4, and I'll stay up a pawn. So for that reason, black needs to go knight to f6, d3. Again, we want to win the pawn. And here queen d5. So in this moment as well, it is important to remember. So I believe that in this line, we just have to be very careful not to forget queen e2. Queen e2 is very important. And in this moment, not to play knight c3. Because here we allow bishop b4, and then we will not win the pawn, because after d takes c4, queen takes c4, queen takes c4, knight e4, and as you can see, we cannot capture knight e4 because our king is under attack. So for that reason, it is very important here to go knight bd2. And the whole point is that now, if you go bishop b4, then I will go c3. So after knight bd2, you just simply win a pawn. Well, obviously, it does not give a guarantee that anyone will the game, but it gives very good chances. So this is about the d5 line. It is very tricky, and even when I was playing some online games, a lot of people played this against me. So d5 is definitely move to remember. It's not a random move. It's not a very bad move. It is a bad move, but it is very tricky for blitz. So you have to remember to take ed, e4, and this is the most important part, queen e2, after knight f6, d3, and here knight bd2 is important. And you will stay up a pawn with a good position. So this is about d5. Let's go to d6. This is this move was very popular at some point, but now it's losing its popularity. And I mean, in my view, it simply gives us a chance to take control over the center. So we should definitely do that by going d4. And here there are many moves. I believe there is bishop g4, there is knight d7, knight f6, and ed, which is the main move. So we're gonna start with the bishop g4. I mean, it's really not a good move, but I've checked an online database, and there are a lot of games here with bishop g4. So it's definitely a move that has been played a lot. And if you ask me why, I don't really know, but I guess it has some point. I mean, they just pin the knight, and after d takes e5, they have this idea of taking on f3 and then getting the pawn back. So that's the whole point of bishop g4. But after d takes e5, now black is unable to take on e5 because of queen takes and knight takes, and we stay just up a pawn. And also f7 is hanging and g4 is hanging at the same time. So we are also ahead of development, and I think it's just simply winning. So bishop f3, queen f3, d takes e5, and here is very important. In this line, it's very important to remember that here you must go queen b3, and you will get a winning position. It is very hard to be black here, to be honest. I don't really understand what black is going to do. Now, as you can see, I pointed out the b7 and f7 pawns. Now, because black needs to defend b7 pawn, and after, let's say, pushing b6, bishop c4, you just attack on f7 with these two pieces. Oops. I'm quite bad at pointing at this, but yeah. Okay, I'll get better. So yeah, we just attack on f7. So bishop c4, queen d7, and again, black is only developing the queen. So knight c3, and now after bishop e3 and rook d1, we attack the queen, and black is simply away. It's just so bad. I mean, there is nothing black can do. So, for example, if knight f6, we can also develop bishop g5, attacking on f6, and it's really bad. But it is very important to remember that after bishop g4 takes queen b3, it's not an easy move to remember. It's not the most usual move, but it is very strong because in this way, we force black to push the b6, and then we attack, and then we force black to make a move with the queen, and then we're gonna attack the queen. So queen d7, and then we bring the knight, and then we start to attack the queen. So that's about bishop g4. Again, it's not a great move, but it has been played by a lot of players. So definitely, if you are playing online a lot, this move might happen. So don't be surprised, okay? So another move that I want to cover is knight d7. Now, well, the idea is quite simple. You just want to defend on e5, and then later on, what black wants to do is just to develop knight f6 and bishop e7, and then go short castle. That's the whole plan. And but in this case, it does not work. I mean, because we'll be up a piece, and let's see how. Bishop c4. And obviously, it is the best square to develop the bishop because you aim to f7. Now, there are some ideas such as knight g5, d takes e5, and queen d5 in the future, and we'll see that. So, bishop c4 and bishop e7 is a very common move, but it is losing the game because d takes e5, and well, there are not many moves to play here as black. D takes e5, and I want you to take your time and think what you will do here as white. You can pause the video and try to solve yourself. And now I'm going to show the move. And it is queen d5. And yes, it is quite surprising, but black is unable to defend on f7. The only way to defend on f7, now, as we can see, we have these two powerful pieces attacking on f7. And the only way to defend on f7 is by playing knight h6. But here we have a bishop, so we'll just capture the knight, and f7 is still hanging, and black cannot take on h6 since we'll just give a checkmate. So after castle, you'll just go back and you will stay up a piece. So for that reason, d takes e5, d takes e5 is simply losing. And if knight takes e5, we'll take knight takes e5, d takes e5, and here another powerful move, double attack, is queen h5. By simply attacking f7 and e5, and it is impossible to defend here as black. And I mean, it is possible by playing g6, but you will lose on e5, and again, with a terrible position. So bishop e7 is really common, but it's really bad move, and it is simply losing. So another move that is probably the strongest, I believe, here is c6. The point of c6 is that, well, let's say if you try to develop the knight here, what I will do is that I will just go knight g5, and now again we have a problem with this f7 pawn. So that's why it is very important here to play bishop c4, because it is really a good square for the bishop. It aims to f7, and as you can see, there are all these types of ideas. So bishop on c4 is a really powerful piece. So c6, knight g5, again attacking on f7. Now knight h6 is possible for black. So, but again, it is not ideally placed, as you can see. Castle, bishop e7, and here there is a very strong move by white, knight e6. Now, I know it's a bit shocking, but you can take your time to understand what is happening. So yeah, we did not just give away our knight for free. There is an idea. So f takes e5, f takes e6, bishop h6. And White's idea, White's attack is extremely strong. Now, two pawns are hanging. Well, yeah, you may ask, but our bishop is also hanging. Yes, it is hanging, but black cannot really take on h6, since if they take on h6, we'll just simply give a check, and then we'll capture this with h6. So let's say here, 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 and we can give a check again, and we'll just take, and it is very hard to defend the f7 mate. So if queen e8, then queen h6 is mate, for example, right? So for that reason, black is taking on h6 is losing, and but if black does not take on h6, then white is going to take either on g7 or on e6. So for that reason, white is simply winning here. I believe it is a winning advantage. Obviously, it is possible to mess it up, but it's a great idea. And I believe that here, the most important moment is to remember that knight e6 is here and not somewhere else, and not to mix up some of the lines. So knight e6 is very strong, and I think it gives a very, very strong attack, and yeah, just gives you a very good position. So that's about knight d7 move, which is not great. And let's get to knight f6, since ed is the most played move, and I believe the strongest as well. Knight f6, it is a bit strange looking move. It feels like black is trying to get to a Petrov defense. But in this case, there is a very direct way to get an advantage, and that way is by capturing on e5 and knight d4 and queen d5. Now, it is a bit strange because we developed the queen very quickly, and it is developed in a very strange square. You may ask, why do we develop the queen to d5? But in this case, we control the space, and we force the knight to go back. Knight c5 and bishop g5. Very strong move. Again, forcing black to make only move, which is bishop e7. Well, technically, you can go queen d7, but it does not really make any sense because the c8 bishop is going to be stuck here. You cannot make a move with that bishop, and which means that you cannot also attack our queen with bishop e6. And I will simply bring the knight to c3 and then go for a long castle. And well, as you can see, we developed almost all our pieces while black developed only the knight on g8 and also not in a good square, actually. So bishop g5, bishop e7, and ed, again, forcing black to take on d6 with the queen. Well, if you take with the pawn, I'll again simply develop the knight, and then the pawn on d6 will be weak. So for that reason, it is preferable for black to take on d6 with the queen. And knight c3. And here, I believe, is where we can end the line when it comes to knight f6, because basically we developed 3 pieces, if we don't count the queens, while black developed 2. And our plan is quite straightforward here. We just want to go long castle and then bring the bishop to c4. So even the queen trade is not really great for black, because if after queen trade, we will attack the c7 pawn from d5. So for that reason, white is simply ahead of the development. And I believe that in this line, after knight f6, it is the important move here was queen d5. So now this you have to remember, and this is very direct. You have to go bishop g5, force the trade, force the trade on d6, and then go knight c3, and then this is how you should play. You go short, long castle, bishop c4, and if you have time, you can also, well, it is preferable to bring this rook to the game as well. And so yeah, this is a great position for white. I wouldn't say it's winning, but it's very good, and I think very easy to play, which is the most important, I think. So let's cover, I believe we have covered knight f6, knight d7, and bishop g4. As you can see, these moves are very logical, but they are not great. So ed is the strongest move here, and queen d4. I really like this move because here it's not like black is going to attack our queen and get ahead of the development very quickly, because we control the space, and as you can see, our pawn on e4 is controlling the center, and the d6 pawn is showing that black is not really active here. So there are 2 moves here. I believe that the most logical is knight c6, because it is really tempting to attack to the queen, and bishop b5. Now we want to take, at some point we want to take on d7 and ruin the pawn structure. So bishop d7, very logical, and bishop c6. We do give 2 bishops advantage to black, but we control the center, and I think that with this line, we get to a position where it is very straightforward, where we have very straightforward game plan. So bishop c6, knight c3, simply developing our pieces. Both sides are going to do that now. Knight f6, bishop f4. Now, you may ask that why bishop f4? It is a bit strange. We do not really do anything because these pawns are protected, actually. But you will understand why we play bishop f4 and not, for example, bishop g5. So bishop e7, castle. Well, it is not dangerous to castle alongside because there is simply no attack here. Black is not really trying to create an attack here. So short castle and rook h e1. So as you can see, this is where I ended this line. And I think because our game plan is quite straightforward here, we bring all the pieces to the game already. Our rooks on d1 and e1 are quite good. And our plan is to go queen c4 and make an e5 push. And now, after e5 push, our f4 bishop will be very strong. So that's the reason why we play bishop f4 in this moment. And because we are going to make this break with e5 and open up the whole center. And guess what? After playing e5, our rooks are going to be extremely strong. So I think this position is really much easier to be white. Black does not have a space to make like very active moves. So I think that in this case, what you have to do is just to go queen c4, just to avoid the queen trade, and then push e5 and open up the position and open the files for your rooks so they can breathe and play comfortably. So that's about knight c6. I believe knight f6 is the best move here. Now again, I think knight c6 is far more tempting for everybody because you like making developing move that also attacks a piece. So knight c6 is definitely a move to pay attention. But knight f6, I believe, is the strongest. So knight c3. Well, here now, if knight c6, it just transposes to the line that we just covered with bishop b5. So bishop e7. Now the plan of knight f6 and bishop e7 is actually quite logical. Black wants to just go short castle and then attack knight c6, so we will not have bishop b5 move. So bishop f4, again, bishop on f4 is not developed badly because it is going to help for e4, e5 push, and then bishop on f4 is quite well placed. So short castle, long castle, and we keep the same idea by just developing our pieces as soon as possible. Knight c6, and then queen d2. And again, the idea is quite straightforward. We just want to develop our pieces. As you can see, bishop goes to c4, rook goes to e1, and then we just want to make e4, e5 push, opening up all the files. Again, black's pieces are developed, but they are not active. They don't control the center. So again, this is a very good position to play as white. Now, if you want to play, again, there is an extra idea for you guys who are watching right now. To go h3, let's say, let me cover in yellow so it will be much easier for you guys. h3, g4, and g5 is also a possibility by pushing this knight away, and then you get access to d5 square and you control more space. So this is just an extra idea to keep in mind that it's also a possibility. But I think the best here is to simply develop the pieces and play for the e5 push. So that's about d6. And let's get to knight f6. Well, this is a very good move for black. And as you may know, it has been played in last like 2-3 World Championship matches. Nepomniachtchi played it. Fabiano Caruana played it against Magnus Carlsen. And obviously, there is no clear advantage against Petrov's defense. so we are going to cover knight c3, and here bishop b4. So why am I covering bishop b4? Because the line after knight c6 is knight c3. So after knight f6, you will see what's coming. So that's why we start from knight f6, knight c3, and knight c6 is simply going to transpose to what we have in our course. And I actually, that's what I like, because it doesn't matter what your opponent is playing. You are going to play knight f3 and then knight c3. So it doesn't matter whether they start with knight c6 or knight f6, you still play knight c3. So in both cases, you do not need to, I mean, it's a bit, you might call it a lazy approach, but you basically don't cover, I mean, you don't have to study Petrov and Ruy Lopez at the same time. You just study one big line. But yeah, basically that was the whole point of picking knight c3, because after knight f6, it is really hard to get a new idea. And that's the point why we covered knight c3. So bishop b4. Obviously, this is the second best move after knight c6. The point of bishop b4 is that Black wants to capture on c3, and then our e4 is hanging. So that's the whole point. But they also sacrifice a pawn. So knight e5, and the move here is short castle. Now, why short castle? Because they don't really have to rush. Now, we do not really have a good move to save this pawn, and we do not really want to save this pawn, because now Black has this strong idea by going rook e8 and attacking the e4 pawn, and it is really not possible to defend the pawn in this case. So for that reason, we need to make sure that we don't let Black to attack our pieces like that. So that's why we go back knight d3. This is the most common move, I believe, and it's a very well known theory. The idea of knight d3 is that we want to give away, we want to get two bishops advantage, but to give the pawn back. So it's not a tragedy that we give the pawn back, but instead we get two bishops advantage. In this case, it's quite good. So bishop c3, d takes c3, knight e4, and bishop e2. So again, this is a usually very well-known position, but I believe that white is not risking whatsoever. It's basically a risk-free game. So let's have a look what are the ideas are. So basically after bishop e2, we just want to castle short and develop our pieces and build some solid advantage. So d5, castle, and I mean, there are many moves here. I believe for Black, they are not terrible. I covered c6, but I think it doesn't really matter what Black does. Our idea is going to be the same. So and that's to go rook e1 and then bishop f1. And then I'll show you what's coming after that. So c6, rook e1, and yes, now we want to go bishop f1 and f3. Well, as you can see, the knight on e4 is, well, it is actually quite annoying. I'm not going to lie. So we want to push the knight away. I'm sorry. So we want to push the knight away and make sure that they are not annoying us anymore. So bishop f5, bishop f1, knight d7, and f3. We achieve our goal. Knight f6 and bishop e3. So the bishop on f2 is really very good placed. Bishop on f1 is also quite solid. And then later on, we want to go queen d2. And you can decide how you want to play. So after bishop e3, you can even make some g4 pushes at some point, or you can try to double the rooks on e-file. There is also idea of pushing a4 a5 and making gaining some space over there because, as you can see, both our bishops are going to be on f2 and f1, and they are going to have a look at the queen side. So, and also, I really like this f3 pawn, to be honest, because it is simply destroying this knight. So this knight does not have this square, does not have this square, and it is very good advantage after bishop e3, and I believe it's risk-free. Usually with two bishops in this type of positions, it's risk-free. You don't really risk much. So you can have many ideas. And one of them is, as I said, a4, e5. One of them is doubling the rooks on e5 is also a possibility. And also such pushes are also, you have to keep in your mind that it's also a possibility. So for that reason, bishop b4, I think it's losing its popularity already. Because knight c6 is simply very good for black. And I'm not gonna lie, after knight c6, it's not like we are going to win the game immediately. But there is something special coming for you. So bishop e4, I think here the main thing to remember is knight d3. Although it's a very well-known move, but if you forget it, you might not get a very good position after rook e8. So that's why I recommend to play this move. And now black is forced to take on c3 because otherwise we'll just develop bishop e2 and maybe even e5 attacking the knight, and the knight will not have a good squares. So for that reason, bishop c3 is only move. And I believe here you just have to remember the perfect setup. You don't really have to remember move by move. But yeah, you just have to remember that you go here, castle, and this is the setup that you are aiming for, which is to push to put the bishop on f2 and have this comfortable advantage. And it is really hard to be black because you don't really have much to do. You just have to make some logical moves and wait to see what white is going to do. So it is definitely not fun to be black here. Two bishops advantage is very good here. And yeah, that's about bishop b4. And now we are going to get to the main line, which is knight c6. And again, as you already know, I'm covering knight c3. And well, here there is only knight f6, I would say, but bishop c5 has also been played. It's a very common mistake, but it has been played a lot. And I think that it is very good to know what you are supposed to do here, because if you don't know what you are supposed to do here, black will simply develop d6 and they will be fine. So for that reason, here 95, very nice tactical resource. Well, we win a pawn. We do not give the piece for free. Don't worry. So 95, d4. And now we are forking both bishop and the knight. I think it's not hard to understand that it's better to get the pawn back for black because they cannot save the piece. So they have to at least get the pawn back. And that's the only way to do is by playing bishop d6. So d takes e5, bishop takes e5, and bishop d3. Now, again, our plan is quite easy. We just want to castle and create some attack. And as you can see, black is not developed that well. Again, we control the center, definitely, since black pawns are just on the 7th rank. So now knight f6, obviously developing move, castle, short castle, and bishop g5. Well, I believe that the idea is quite easy. You just want to push f4. If you ask me, I don't really know where this bishop is going. I don't really know how black is going to play against this pin. Obviously, we are not here to take on f6. So in case of h6, you just go back and you keep the idea of pushing f4, e5. So that's the plan here. And I believe that if we just make random moves like d6, f4, check here. Now this bishop has also, it's not perfectly placed. It is going to be pushed away with bishop c4, maybe knight e2, and later on white will have this e5 idea. So definitely it's not fun here to be black. There are also knight d5 ideas maybe somewhere, and this pin is simply too annoying for black. So I think here it is very important actually to understand why bishop c5 is bad. The main thing here to remember is knight e5. If you remember knight e5, I think it is quite easy to get a good position. If you remember knight e5, knight e5, d4, here takes. Now I do recommend bishop d3, but even if you play something else, such as, for example, bishop c4, it is not going to change the evaluation that much, because I believe that white is, again, they have very good position. I believe that here f4 is also a possibility, again, with a very good position. So the most important thing to remember knight d5. If you remember knight d5, you will get a good position. Now, again, I think bishop d3 is the best with this line, but it is not as important as, for example, knight e5 here. Because if you don't remember knight e5, you can even get a bad position here simply by allowing d6 and so on. I mean, if you play just random moves like, I don't know, d3 or bishop b5. So for that reason, knight e5 is very important. And after knight e5, you will get an advantage, very likely. So knight f6. With this move, if you don't know, this opening is called 4 knights defense. And this line is usually known as for its drawish tendency. But in this case, we are going to make a really fresh move, a move that I actually accidentally found for this course. I had a misclick on that square. And then I was like, wait a second, it's actually quite interesting. And to just show my point, I can tell that the move that I've covered in this chapter, I have played myself in a lot of games. I have played even in classical game. To be honest, I did forget my preparation and I got a bad position, but it was my fault. But I also played in Armageddon game against very strong grandmasters, Jeffrey Chung and Jose Martinez, known as Jospem. And I beat Jeffrey and I lost to Jose, but against Jose as well, I also got very good position. So I believe that this move is, I'm not just recommending you a move for you to play. I think it's also very good for me to play. I think it's very good to play in any time control. Maybe if you ask me, would you play this all the time nonstop in classical games? I would say no. But in blitz games, it is definitely very good. And let's get into that move. And the move is knight d5. Now, for many of you, I believe that you have never seen this move before. And I know it's crazy. To be honest, when I had that misclick, I was like, wait a second, was this even possible? Was there such a move? So I really like this move. This is by far my favorite chapter, just because of knight d5. And let me explain to you why knight d5 is special move. So if, let's say, we go bishop c4, then we allow knight e4. It is quite similar to bishop c5 line. Again, white does not get an advantage. Now, if bishop b5, then bishop c5 is a move. And what black wants to do here is they want to push d5. Sorry, they want to push d5 and get control over the center. And with bishop b5, they have some other moves, such as bishop c5, knight d4 is a move, bishop b4 is a move. So for that reason, knight d5 is quite special. We just, it's a move that it does not have a strict idea. So it does not have only one idea. It's not like, oh, I just want to go bishop c4. No, it has multiple ideas. One is preparing c3, d4. Maybe it also prepares d4 immediately. And also it prepares bishop c4. And in some cases, even bishop d3. So I have played this move a lot and I really like this move. I think it's a very good move for both classical and blitz time control, especially for blitz time control. I think it's a very good surprise. So I'm definitely very excited to cover this move. And actually, now I know that you may think, what is this? Why do I sacrifice a pawn for no reason? And that's not really for no reason. You can take on e4, and taking on e4 as black is a fine move, but it's definitely not easy to play there as black. So there are 5 moves that I have covered. One of them is bishop e7. Another is bishop c5, knight e4, d6, which I don't think that many people will play, if I'm being honest, and knight d5. So let's start with the most logical one, obviously, knight e4. We just sacrificed the pawn. For what it is? We need to know why we sacrificed the pawn. And now it's a very interesting moment because I believe that there are 2 moves. One is more as a tricky approach. It's a bit risky. So if you play blitz, maybe that's better. But if you are playing classical, I wouldn't recommend it probably. But for blitz, it's definitely a very good line. I've played it myself a couple of times, and I don't think that anyone ever played against it correctly, to be honest. So one move is d4. d4 is the main move. In fact, it's another pawn sacrifice. We are not aiming to take after ed back, just a spoiler. So, but let's start with queen e2, and we'll get to the d4 later on. So I think, again, as I say in the text, try this move if you are playing a blitz game. Yes, indeed, I think it's a good try, especially for a blitz game. And there are 2 moves here, and that's f5 and knight f6. Knight f6 is by far the most common move here. Usually, when you are playing very quickly and you play such weird move as knight d5, and your opponent takes on e4, and then you go queen e2, they do not really want to risk and open up the king. You know what I'm talking about? So for that reason, f5 is a purely computer suggestion. So the main move here is knight f6, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, f5 is strong, and we'll get to that as well. So knight f6, knight d5. Now, I want you to take some time and to understand what is happening, because it is really complicated and very unusual position. I don't think I've ever seen something like this ever in the opening. It's move 6, and it's already a chaos. It is very hard to understand what is happening. So have a look at the position and think for some time. So as you can see, taking on d5 is not an option for black because we'll capture on c6 and we'll simply win the queen. So for that reason, well, knight e5, I think somebody played it against me. I don't think I should mention the player's name because he will not be happy, but it is simply losing because after queen e5, bishop e7, and knight c7, we are having a double, there is a double attack, and we simply take on a8 and upper rook, completely winning position, right? So taking on e5 is also not an option. And knight d4 is the strongest move here. We'll get to that, but let's start from bishop e7. This move is not the best, but it is usually what people play in a faster time control. It's safe. You make sure that you are not losing with some weird check, not with some weird check, And for that reason, bishop e7 is the solid approach, but it simply gives us two bishops advantage here. So knight c6, d takes c6, queen e7 or knight e7, it's the same. Queen e7, knight e7, king e7, and d3. We have a very solid advantage here. And as you can see, I pointed out already with the errors what you want to do here. We just want to develop our king to f3. To f2. Bring the bishop to d2, and then we can develop the other bishop to e2. And in this case, since we have two bishops advantage, we can push to the both sides. So we can have this type of ideas a4, a5, a4, b4, or g4, h4, because you have two bishops. So whenever the position opens up, you are mostly going to be in favor. Now, both sides here don't control the center. I would say that it's in that regard, the position is equal, but it is very good because white has this two bishops advantage, and I think it's kind of a position where you have unlimited game plan, so you can just do whatever you want. But also, if you are, I just had this idea. If you are a player who likes to attack and who likes to play against opponent's weak king, you can also go knight f6 check. And it is also ruining the pawn structure of black. And then you can make some move here. For example, queen e4, with the idea to develop the bishop here. Now, again, I think it's better to go queen e7 and play with the two bishops. But if you feel like you will beat your opponent in that moment, if you think that your opponent is not going to figure out how to play here, how to navigate the pieces here better, you can also go for this. But again, I think queen e7 is better because you just get a very simple game plan. Now, why this is bad? Because black does not have to castle to short side. They also can castle to long, and then it is not very dangerous for them. So that's the reason why I do not recommend knight f6 here. So bishop e7 is the move that I believe that you will see. And I think that this is the main line if your opponent takes on e4. I think that if you are playing in a blitz game, you will, 99% of the time, you will have this position. I believe. At least that's the case with me. And I think almost everybody will play bishop e7 here. And you will get this comfortable position where you can push for a win for a very long time with no risk, I think. So, but the best move according to computers here is knight d4. Now again, this is a crazy scenario. We go queen c4. And here there are two moves. One is actually three moves. One is knight c2. And actually, that's probably one of my favorite lines that I covered in this whole course. And let's dive into it, actually. Knight c2, sorry. Knight e6 is the solid approach. Knight c2, very logical move. And king d1. Now, I think you need some time to understand what is happening. So basically, what is happening is that with queen c4, we also attacked on c7. So c7 is hanging, and f7 is also hanging in the future. So now black can't really take on a1. After knight a1, knight c7, king e7. Now you can take your time and think what will you do here as white, because queen f7 is not really mate because of king d6, but there is a very strong move which wins the game immediately. It's and very straightforward. You do not really need to do anything hard there, and that move is b3. Very simple, very elegant move actually. You just want to go bishop a3 check, force black to play d6, and then you will take on f7, and that's simply a checkmate. And now, if black goes d6 immediately, you will give a checkmate. If they push d5, you give bishop a3, and that's not a checkmate, but well, it forces black to play queen d6, and obviously you will take the queen and you'll be up a queen with a completely winning position. And if you look at the position, there is no way to defend this. It is really crazy. There is no way to defend this. There is simply no way. So for that reason, knight a1 is not working. But it is very likely actually, because your opponent might be like, you know what? There's no mate. Let's go. But after b3, it's just over. It's not mate, but you will win a queen, and yeah, it's just simply losing. So for that reason, there is c6. Now, if black takes on d5, you take on queen d5, and f7 is hanging, and c2 is hanging at the same time. So, and it's impossible to defend both. So you will take on c2 with the next move, and you will stay up a piece. So it is very easy to understand that knight d5 also does not work. So for that reason, c6 a very strong move actually, if you ask me. Now again, it's a chaotic situation. It is hard to understand what is happening in this position. But I believe that if you remember this line, I don't think that it will occur in your game, because it is really a strange move. A lot of strange moves here. Like knight d4 is not the easiest move to make. Usually it's psychological, because after knight, when you play quickly, it is obvious that it's a preparation and your opponent wants to stay as solid as possible. So knight d4 is not really the move that people look at when they think that, oh, my opponent is in preparation, because they are afraid that there will be something dangerous. And well, actually there is. And so after c6, very strong move actually, forcing knight f6, queen f6. Now c2 is hanging, but e5 is also hanging, and a1 rook is also hanging. So it is very hard situation to be white here. But there is very strong move, knight g4. Now we force black to make a decision where the queen should go. Well, there are only two squares here, because queen also needs to protect on c2 and attack on g4 knight at the same time. So queen g6, and well, there is also queen f5, so don't worry, we'll cover that as well. And queen e2 check, extremely strong move. Bishop e7, knight e5. Now, if you look at the position, queen has only one square to go, to which from where they will be able to protect c2 knight, and that's queen f5 and g4. And white is simply winning. With the next move, white will take on c2 with the king, and you will be up a material with a winning position. So yes, exactly. Black is eventually running out of options and tricks, and there is no simply any move that keeps the game going, because you will simply take on c2, and the rest is matter of technique. So for that reason, there is also queen f5. But I think queen f5 is a bit easier to be as white here. Now queen e2 check does not work, but there is bishop d3. d5, well, bishop d3, now it's a double attack, so d5, oops, d5, bishop f5, d takes c4. Now we cannot take bishop c2 because bishop g4. So our knight is also hanging. But we can take on c8. And now black cannot capture on c8 because c2 is hanging. But we should not forget that our a1 knight is a1 rook is hanging. So knight a1, bishop b7, attacking the rook and the c6 pawn at the same time. Rook b8, bishop c6 with the check, very important. King d8, just to avoid all the unnecessary checks with rook e1 if king e7. So king d8 and bishop d5, very strong move. Again, double attack, but we do not really care about the f7 pawn. We mostly want to capture on c4, because after capturing on c4, as you can see, we are going to play b3, develop the bishop to b2, and the a1 knight is stuck. Even though now black is up an exchange, but the position is simply losing for them because it is impossible to defend on c4. Even if black tries to defend, there are many options. There is option of going knight e5. There is a more solid option to go knight e3, and then you will eventually capture on c4, and at some point you will capture on a1 knight with b3 bishop b2 idea. So this is a very cute idea with knight g4. I believe that after c6, this is the key, because after knight d4, it's quite logical to my view that queen c4 is the only move. Again, we attack on c7, we attack to d4, and we attack to f7. So it's quite a good square actually. And after knight c2, here c6, the most important here is to remember that you should take and go knight g4. And here, yeah, it's just you just have to not make this mistake that after queen g6 to go bishop d3. After queen g6, you have to remember that you should give a check and then go knight e5, because here this does not work, because as you can see, we cannot take on c8, and now our bishop and our knight is hanging. This bishop is going to take this, and our rook is hanging. So it is really bad here to be white. So for that reason, do not go bishop d3 here. Queen e2 is the main move. And then you go knight e5 and g4. So yes, this is about knight c2, which is actually a very logical move, because you just want to force white to take on c2, and then you just take on d5, and you stay up a pawn for no reason, actually. So for that reason, it is very important to remember what you are supposed to do after knight c2, because knight c2 is very logical, but it is also a losing move. So for that reason, there is c5. I believe that this is a very strong move, and it's a move that computer also likes, but I think it's just very hard to make for a human. If you ask me, yeah, it seems logical, but it's not the most common move. But here, as white, we make really special move. We play c3. Yeah, I know it is really strange. Now you may think, wait a second. What about knight c2 check? Yes, we allow knight c2 check, and we sacrifice a rook for no reason. I mean, we actually do sacrifice a rook for a reason. We get an attack, but we don't get the rook back immediately, or well, I mean, we don't get the rook back at all, I think. But we get a very, very strong attack. So knight c2 check, king d1, king d1, knight a1, and bishop d3. Now, it's quite a unique position to get when it's move 10. All our pieces are on the center, just c1 bishop is poorly placed. But our idea is to bring the rook to the game, and then we'll have a very strong attack. So bishop d6, an extremely logical move. You just want to develop. Why it is logical? Because if bishop e7, and here we have mate in 2. We take on f6, bishop f6, and queen f7. So it is important to understand why this doesn't work. So for that reason, bishop d6 is quite logical. Knight f7, very beautiful sacrifice. And after this, we are going to see a lot of forced decisions. If I remember correctly, computer was having some trouble showing knight f7, the weak computers. But after knight f7, I think, if I remember correctly, white is winning. But again, it is very hard not to go bishop d6 here, in my view, because when you are playing with black pieces, what you want to achieve here, as you can see, your king is stuck in the center, right? And you just want to do something to get away with it. So like you just want to escape as soon as possible. And bishop d6 is a perfect way to do that. And if you ask me, as black, I wouldn't really think that knight f7 is the danger here, but it is winning, I think. King f7, knight f6 check, again, forcing king f6, queen h4 check, and now king f7, only move, bishop c4 check, another strong move. Now king e8, again, only move. You can't really go here because you will allow this check here, and I believe that queen f3 is also winning. But even if not queen f3, you just simply go d4, and bishop g5 is unstoppable. I mean, it is probably stoppable by h6, but then you will simply give this check, and it will lead into a checkmate in 2 moves. Because if king g6, let me show you. If king g6, then I believe that this is checkmate. It is checkmate. And if king e7, you have a lot of great options here, but I think that this is the easiest. So queen f7 is also checkmate. And so for that reason, king e8 is the only move. Rook e1 check, finally bringing the rook into the game. Bishop e7 and d3. Very quiet, very elegant, and very beautiful move. Now, it is impossible to stop bishop g5. And if you can't stop bishop g5, it means that I'm going to play bishop g5, and then I'm going to cover on e7. And it is simply horrible to be black there. So the position is completely lost here. For example, if h6, it's not saving black. There are multiple ways. Even bishop g5 here is winning again, but you can give a check and checkmate from here. So for that reason, after d3, white is winning. And again, it is not easy to remember. But if you know, you will win the game quite easily. That's the whole point of this. And bishop d6 is a very natural move to do. The best move here, according to the computers, is knight d5, queen d5, and now the only way to defend the f7 pawn is queen f6. Well, why queen f6 and why not queen e7? Because queen e7 will lead into rook e1, and then I will capture something. I'll capture on f7. I don't know, maybe knight c4, and then I will win the queen and will win the game since the a1 knight is out of the game, and my attack is simply way too strong. So queen f6, only move, rook e1, bishop e7. Well, obviously, you just want to avoid knight g4 type of check, knight c6 type of check. So bishop e4 is a quite logical move. And again, very important move to remember is knight g4 here. You attack the queen and you force your opponent to go somewhere that is giving you many options. So queen c6, obviously trying to trade the queens, but Well, obviously we are not going to trade the queens, but it is logical for black to play this move. And rook e7, king e7, queen g5 check, king e8, queen g7. And here the only move for black is a really crazy move that I don't think, to be honest, any player is capable of finding, is king e7. Now, yeah, you just give the piece back, and the point is that after queen h8, there is queen a4 check, and then black will be able to capture. So if you are playing with white, you should know that this is the best way for black, and it is, I believe, you can, if you want to try to play for a win, I believe bishop f5 is a move, and then you just want to push d4 and give a check, but it also leads to a repetition. So, but I believe that 99% of the time, if you ever get this position, because I think it's really hard for black to play all these moves, c5, to get even into this position without losing before. What I mean is that it is quite hard to find knight d5 here, and or not to make any other blunder here, which will lose the game immediately. So I believe it's hard to find knight d5, queen f6 here. And so if you get to this line and your opponent plays king e7, yes, maybe you should take a draw with queen g5, king e8, or bishop, and then going back to g7. But if you feel like you just want to keep the game going, bishop f5, and with a very simple idea, it doesn't really matter what your opponent plays. You just go d4 and bishop g5 check. And then, yeah, it's dangerous. And if your opponent is not playing correctly, you can win the game. So definitely, if you are willing to take a risk, you can go bishop f5. But I believe that most of the time, rook f8 will happen. And after rook f8, there is only one move that wins the game, but it is very strong move, very elegant move, and that's bishop e4. So now, what's the plan? The plan is that we just want to give knight f6 check, put the bishop here, or have some control over d5 square. And then we just want to develop d3, let's say knight d5, and bishop f4 or bishop g5. So, for example, if queen d6, knight f6 check here, and d3. As you can see, white is simply dominating the whole position. And now I have bishop g5. I have knight d5 with the bishop g5 idea. And just an example for you guys, if king c7, you can go bishop f4 and you will win the game, because after queen f4, you will have a double attack with knight d5 and you will simply win the game. So this attack is extremely powerful after bishop e4. White is winning here. So all what you have to remember, that the whole point of this is to give a check, have control over d5 square, and then play d3 and bring the c1 bishop to the game, because even though black is up so much material, in fact, they are up one exchange and one rook, they can't really do nothing about the attack, because, I mean, let's have a look. This knight is out of the game, this rook is out of the game, this bishop is out of the game, and all our pieces are participating in the attack. So this position is just completely winning. But you have to be very alert for tactical nuances. So, for example, after king c7, well, you have to be sharp. You have to find bishop f4. Technically, even if you play this check and then bishop f4, that's also winning. So that shows how winning the position is here after bishop e4. So that's about the c5 line here. But the most solid approach here is knight e6. Simply defending c7 with the knight and covering f7. knight f6, queen f6, and d4. Again, this position is equal, but it is still very unusual. It's very fresh position. It is not very well known how to navigate in these type of positions. It is not easy to understand what's the game plan. So, for example, if d6, which is obviously the most natural approach because the knight on e5 is quite strong, and you really want to get away from it as soon as possible if you are black. So queen b5 check, a great tactical resource because now if black goes c6, knight c6. And as you can see, you cannot really take on c6 because after queen c6, it's a double attack. The king on e8 is checked, and you will capture on the next move with queen on a8, and you will be up a material. So for that reason, c6 is not an option. King d8. And here, a very great move, amazing move, bishop e3. Well, now as you can see, d4 pawn is hanging and e5 knight is hanging at the same time. But we are not supposed to go back knight f3 because we will let black to take on d4. So for that reason, we just defend. It's a very calm move, but very strong at the same time because now if black does not take on e5, let's assume, we will just go long castle, and then it is hard to say what black is going to do with this king. So, but if black does take on e5, then we take back queen e7, long castle, forcing black to make only move, which is bishop d7, queen b7. Again, black has only one square for the rook, which is c8, and then bishop a6, powerful idea. Now, we just want to take queen c8, and that's a checkmate. King e8 and rook d7. Very simple, very elegant move. After queen d7, we just take on c8, and now, as you can count, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, we are up 2 pawns with 2 bishops advantage. We are also ahead of the development, and also a7 is hanging. So this position is completely losing after the queen trade, and usually when you are up a material, you do want to trade pieces, and here, since you are ahead of the development as white, it is much easier for you. It will be much easier for you to trade pieces and get to a pawn end game where, while being up 2 pawns, you will easily win the game. So that's about d6 move here, which is actually very logical, and I believe that d6 will happen a lot in after 96. If your opponent plays 96, it means that they are on a quite good level. But again, d6 is possible for anyone. d6, you can play d6 even if you are a genius player, and because it's not an easy blunder. Because technically d6 is a blunder. After queen b5, king d8, bishop d3, it's a very bad position. Because simply, if they don't take, that's what you have to remember, that you go short castle, you go to long castle, and then black is unable to touch your knight, and then you can simply develop with bishop c4, and you can do whatever you want, since black's king is in the middle of the board, and it's not safe whatsoever for them. So the main move here, and the strongest move here, is bishop d6. So now if black does not play d6, and if they make, let's assume bishop e7, we will just go bishop e3 and long castle. That's our plan. So bishop d6 is a strong move. I think it's the best approach. It leads to a complex position because here we are going to sacrifice the pawn with bishop e3. Now, we are going to have a lot of compensation. Bishop e5, d takes e5, queen e5, and long castle. Now, Again, black also needs to take care of the king safety. So for that reason, short castle is a very logical approach, and bishop d3. And now we have a great compensation. As you can see, I pointed out that we just want to transfer our queen to h4 and create an attack from h4, since from h4 we'll attack to h7, and we just want to give a checkmate. And black needs to make a decision what to do about it. So obviously, now the pieces needs they need some air. So d5, opening up the c8 bishop and creating some sort of counterplay. Queen h4 and h6. So now if black goes g6, let's say, what will happen is that they will give us all these squares. We can control them with bishop h6. At some point we can get to the queen f6. That would be very ideal. But it is simply very bad. So black is trying not to make weaknesses for them, and by going h6. And now, very good move, king b1. Just simply making sure that with the next move, we go rook e1 and everything is covered, everything is safe, and we do not need to worry. But we can also think about, after king b1, sacrifices on h6, because, for example, showing the purpose of king b1, for example, yeah? If we take now, takes, queen g5 check, and we are forced to trade the queens, and our attack is gone. So for example, so that's why king b1 is a very safe move. It is good to make here, but preparing rook to e1. So f5 is the best move here according to the computers. Now, if you ask me, I don't think it's possible to make for a human being. I think if you play somebody, they will go bishop d7, and after rook e1, now we have a lot of threats, such as bishop h6, bishop c5, and the queen does not have a good square to go. Again, let's have an example, actually. If queen d6, bishop h6, takes. Now, white is winning because, well, it is simply very hard to stop queen h7. If you don't know, this is how you deal with this type of situations. After rook e8, you give bishop h7 check, here, and mate. Other than that, there is no way to defend queen h7 checkmate. So, but if the king was on c1, queen f4 check would have worked. But now it's just a checkmate, right? So, and again, another point why king on b1 is good. So f5 is the best because it is preparing queen f6. Now, if bishop d7 here and then queen f6, we'll just take, and this position is very bad because the king is extremely weak. White has two bishops advantage. We can also bring the rook to the attack with g3. So it is really terrible position to have as black. So f5 is the best. Again, it's not an easy move to make. Rook e1 and queen f6. And now we have to trade queens, otherwise we'll get to a bad position. And b4. And as I said, according to the computer, white is still the one who is pushing. And the point of b4 is not to allow black to take control with over the center with c5 and then d4. So now the idea is to go bishop d2 back, bring the rook to e5, and then double the rooks on e file, and then just try to use two bishops advantage. With the rook on e5, we attack to d5 and f5 pawns. So definitely, first of all, we have to understand that it's not easy for our opponents to find all these moves. And even if they do, it's not easy to be black here, because if you're white, worst case scenario, you can give up this bishop for this knight, and then you will get to an opposite color bishop's position, and you can make a draw comfortably, even though you are down a pawn as white. But you don't really need to do that because you can have, I believe, risk-free game after bishop d2 and rook e5 idea. And to be honest, if your opponent finds all these moves, well, they deserve some sort of credit. But even after finding all these moves, I believe that after king b1, f5 here, and white is the only one who is pushing for a win. So definitely, in this line, it is very important to remember that after bishop d6, we have to sacrifice the pawn, and we are going to get a very good compensation. And again, here, I believe that it is very important not to rush the things on king b1, just to make sure that in the future, after bishop h6 sacrifices, we will be able to win the game and not lose because of queen f4 or queen g5 trades. So that's why king b1 is a very important move to make. So I believe, even though, just to summarize this knight d4 move, even though knight d4 is a good move, and technically it's fine for black, and knight e6, I think that there's still a lot to play for both sides. And if you are white, you can definitely have a very comfortable game here. And you just have to memorize that here after d6, queen b5 check is quite important, and then bishop e3. So basically, you can think of this. After knight e6, you have to sacrifice on e5. In one scenario, you give a piece. In one scenario, you just sacrifice a pawn. So in this case, after d6, you go queen b5 check, king d8, bishop e3, you sacrifice a piece. In this scenario, after bishop d6, bishop e3, you sacrifice a pawn, and you get a counterplay. So I believe that knight e4 is a fine move for black, but it does give us very good chances to win the game. It's definitely going to be very fun to play. I believe that after queen c4, we are going to have a crazy position, no matter what happens. If knight d2, if knight c2, and c5. And, well, we all play chess for fun, in a way, because we like the game, we enjoy the game, it's entertaining in a way. So definitely getting this position is going to be fun. And if you remember the lines and the ideas, I think that it is very likely that you can win a game, and you can win a game in a very beautiful way. So definitely, after knight d4, if I was you, I would be very happy, because it is definitely going to be a very exciting game. So, and I think that even on a high level, after knight e4 and queen c4, white has very good chances to win the game. So I'm definitely very positive about queen e2, knight f6, knight e5 line. Definitely, I think that it's worth to give a shot. But let's get to the point why queen e2 is not liked by the computer. So queen e2, obviously, as you see, if your opponent goes knight f6, it is going to be a very fun game, and with the great chances to win the game. A lot of sharp positions where, if you know the line better, you will most likely win the game because you are more familiar with the line. But if your opponent goes f5, which is computer suggestions, then we are not really going to have all that fun. But again, I think when you are on a preparation and you play queen e2 quickly, your opponent really needs to be very confident to play f5 and to understand that after d3, this does not work, because here they have knight d4 and they attack both. Well, they technically don't attack c2, but let's say if I move queen e3, then knight c2 will be very bad, right? And if I go queen d1, then knight d5, and I'm just down a piece. So for that reason, f5 is the strongest piece, and it is really unfortunate that d3 does not work here. But the move here is d4. So sacrificing a pawn. Now there are a lot of ideas such as bishop g5, maybe knight g5. Even I'm talking about, of course, after ed, bishop g5, knight g5. But the best move here is d6, and here queen c4. The idea of this move is to make sure that in the future, black is unable to castle short side. So, for example, bishop e7 and short castle is impossible because we'll capture on e7 and it will be double attack and we'll win a piece, right? And well, here, as you can see, I pointed out that the moves are bishop e3 and long castle. And basically what we are trying to achieve there is that we want to take on e5 and open up the rook's diagonal, because after long castle, the rook will be on d1, right? And as you can see, it can attack potentially on d8 queen. So now it is very important that after this queen c4 move to understand the whole point, like why it doesn't work. So for example, let's say bishop e7, logical move. Black wants to develop and make sure that they can castle safely and get rid of white's attack. So after bishop e3, now, well, they see that castle is not an option because knight e7 is a very dangerous move. So for that reason, they might play bishop e6. It is very likely that bishop e6 can happen. So it is very important that after queen c4, you always need to remember this, that there is knight c7 check. This is the key of this line. So after queen c7, queen e6, white is better because, first of all, we have two bishops advantage and the position is open. It's not closed down. So two bishops is much better here. And black can't castle yet. They can't really go long castle or short castle because the queen on e6 is actually dominating the position. And also f5 is hanging. So it is very likely. And also here, if bishop e6, again, what you want to do is to give knight c7 check, and then you will take this with the check, and then you will take on f5 as well. So again, I don't think that it's necessary here to cover more because first of all, I think queen e2 is a good line. I really think that, let's put it this way, if your opponent cannot prepare against it, if your opponent does not know that you are going to play it, it's definitely an amazing line. You can play it because I believe that even after queen c4, even though computer gives close to an equal position, it is very likely that here your opponent will go bishop e6 and blunder knight c7. It is very likely. But even not, if not, you just go long castle and then you just want to take on e5. So the game plan is really straightforward. And the black cannot move this knight because c7 is going to, well, we can capture on c7, right? So for that reason, I think that queen e4, to just summarize queen e2, I think queen e2 is an amazing line. Definitely a move that you can try when you are playing Blitz, I believe, every time. I think it's great. And I don't believe that f5 will occur. I think if you ask me, knight f6, knight e5, and bishop e7 is the most likely to happen. But in case if your opponent goes knight d4, be prepared and make sure that you do remember all the necessary lines here, because I believe that after queen c4, our chances to win the game are very high because you just know that all the lines are leading into complications where you know better than your opponent because, well, you are watching the course right now, not your opponent, right? So that's why I think it's a great try, especially for a blitz game. You can try even in a classical game, but definitely a move to remember and move to study. 100%, it's worth it. But here, another approach and the strongest according to the computers, and my main recommendation, because it is not really as risky as much, because after queen e to f5, it's a complicated position, but it can also get worse. If your opponent plays very precisely, maybe they can get a better position. But in this case, I believe it's equal after d4, what I recommend. But again, it is very complicated position and not easy to be black here. So let's start from ed. Bishop d3. Yes, we do not need to take on d4. That was not the point of d4. The point of d4 was to open up this bishop's diagonal, to open up the e file, and now we'll see what's the whole point of it. So knight f6. This is not the best option, but it's a move. Here there is knight c5, and knight c5 is the most solid approach, because black wants to put the knight on e6, and it seems very solid, right? Because it covers the e file. The knight on e6 is very protected. So it's a very logical move, and that's the main move actually in this position. But knight f6 is also a possibility. Queen e2 check. Now, it is a bit strange because black needs to play only move bishop e7, knight f6 check, gf, and now bishop h6. As you can see, yes, we are down 2 pawns, and there it is, 1 and 2. But black's king is stuck in the center. They cannot castle, in fact, because the bishop is on h6, right? And for a moment, black's king is on the center, and what obviously black is going to do is to try to castle to the queen side. So by developing the bishop and then the queen and then making castle work. So d5, long castle, and now a6. Well, it is the strongest move because we have a very powerful idea, if bishop e6. And I would like you to take your time and think about it. Well, since you know that the move is a6, you can guess why a6 is the only move that survives. Yes, the move is bishop b5. And it is very terrible position, if I'm being honest, for black, because let's say after queen d7, knight d4, now you can't really castle here because I will simply take on c6, and then you get the same pawn structure here. And also I'm giving you checkmate. So you have bad pawn structure, and you are also getting checkmated. It's really not fun. So in order not to allow this, as you can see, knight d4 and rook e1 is coming, and e6 is also going to be, well, an issue that you need to care about. For that reason, black needs to go a6. It's just necessary. And now knight h4. Very nice move. The idea is to go f4, and well, at some point we want to use f5 square for one of our pieces, whether it's knight on h4 or the bishop on d3. So, and also, obviously, we just want to bring the last piece to the attack. So, bishop e6, logical approach. Black wants to play queen d7 and long castle. So, f4, our ideas are simple. We should do everything that to make sure that queen d7 and long castle is not a comfortable option. So now queen d7 is not possible, right? Because of f5, and the bishop is trapped. No more squares to go, and we will win the bishop. So for that reason, there is queen d6, only move. And also Well, there is knight b4 as well, which I don't think is very likely that can happen. So let's check knight b4 first, and f5, forcing the bishop to go back. Now, technically, knight b4 attacks to a2 and to d3. Well, taking go d3 can be beneficial since black will eliminate our bishop and they will get two bishops advantage. Now, in this case, I don't think it's very helpful, but it's also a move that wants to push c5, c4 at some point. So it's definitely just an active try to create some counterplay. But f5, bishop d7 only move, and rook de1. Now, as you can see, we have a threat. We just want to go bishop g7, attack on h8, and we also want to attack on f6. So if black allows bishop g7, the position is completely lost. So let's say we just make a random move, such as knight a2, king b1, knight b4, and bishop g7. Now, well, black needs to move the rook, and we just take this. And as you can see, it's a terrible position, and it is almost impossible to defend. Well, it is technically impossible. It is technically possible by playing knight c6, but we can take. That's the worst case scenario, and go f6 and win the piece. And also, our attack is still alive, actually. So for that reason, black needs to go rook g8 and bishop d2. I really like this move. It's a very strong move, forcing black to capture on d3. Now, if you take on a2, I go king b1, and you cannot go back knight b4 because I will take on b4. And as you can see, the queen on e2 does not allow black bishop to take on b4. So for that reason, knight d3, cd. Now, I know CD might seem like, oh, we are weakening our king and so on, but we have a very strong idea right now. And that idea is to go bishop b4. And e7 is going to be hanging, and there is no way to defend actually after bishop b4. For that reason, black has a very natural move, c5. And I believe that this is by far the most natural move. But I would like you to pause the video for a bit, for 5 to 10 seconds, and try to look for some tactic. It's white to move and win the game. And the move here is bishop a5. Yes, very strong move. Simply forcing black queen. Oops, I'm sorry. Simply forcing black queen to make a move and leave the e7 unprotected. So queen a5, for example, queen e7 checkmate. If not queen e5, then we'll simply capture the queen. And usually when you are up a queen, you win the games. So b6 is a possibility, but it does not change anything because you capture the pawn, and then again, it's the same scenario. So for that reason, a5 is the best move because it stops bishop b4, and it does not allow bishop a5. But here, queen h5, and I believe that it's just a terrible position to have as black. I think it's just lost because for a moment, now I'm attacking on h7. And now, as white, I just want to go rook e2 and rook e1, attack to e7. And I really don't see how it is possible to defend here as black. Because for a moment, let's assume rook g7 and rook e2. It's a terrible position, and it is technically lost. So for this reason, knight b4 is not a great move, but I think if you face knight b4, you have to make sure that you remember this bishop d2 idea, because it's really strong. It forces black to make this decision to take on d3, cd, and now we have this bishop b4 idea. And obviously, I think it's very likely that your opponent might either miss bishop b4, or might go c5 and miss bishop a5. So definitely a possibility to win the game quickly here. But also, even if that does not happen, I don't think that knight b4 is the way to equalize the game. So queen d6 is the best chance for white. For black. And black is aiming to castle the long side. So knight f5. And now why it's very powerful, because we force black to take on f5. Otherwise, knight g7 check is coming, and then black will simply not able to castle at all. So bishop f5, and we take bishop f5. And as you can see, again, we have these errors with the rook making the jumps to d3, and then maybe g3, maybe b3 attacking the b7. Of course, we need to bring the h1 rook to the game. But the most important detail here to pay attention is that we stopped the long castle. Black cannot long castle at all, because now the bishop is on f5. It's dominating. It's by far, I think, our strongest piece, if you ask me. Because if you allow long castle as white, it is very important to understand that if you allow long castle, you will not have a good position at all. You will simply be down 2 pawns, and maybe even with no compensation left. But here, white's position is close to winning, simply because black's king is stuck in the center. And there is no way for black to castle to the long side. So that's why it is very important after queen d6 to remember the knight f5. It's not simplifying the game. We are only making sure that black king stays in the center and we can continue our attack. So that's about knight f6 move. And it is, well, obviously, it is important not to go bishop g5 and to give this check, because this is the first step. The first step is to make sure that our opponent has a bad pawn structure. Second step is we stop the black king from castling. Also, in the future, we create some ideas such bishop g7, bishop f6, right? d5, and then we develop. And I think in a real game, it is very likely that the opponent will go bishop e6 and bishop b5 leads to a winning position, because then you manage to spoil the pawn structure here as well with taking on c6. And then black is like, where am I supposed to castle? Well, nowhere, because you'll get mated in both sides. So that's why a6 is the move, and knight h4 is really the most important. If your opponent goes a6, knight h4 is very important because of this f4 and knight f5 idea. All these ideas are great, and it is really the most important move to remember in this line. So I think after knight h4, it gives you an advantage. So definitely, this is about knight f6. And now let's get to knight c5, which is, I think, a better move than knight f6 because it's more solid. And now we go castle. And, well, black is aiming to put the knight on e6, but they don't really need to do that right now. So for that reason, bishop e7, rook e1, and knight e6. Well, there is a move, short castle, but it is losing because of, well, I mean, it's a natural move, but it is losing because of the Greek gift. If you don't know what it is, let's see it. And that's bishop h7 check. This is what is called Greek gift. And king h7. And the point of Greek gift is that you always sacrifice a bishop, and then you give a check with the knight, and then your queen joins to the attack, and then you give a checkmate from h7, usually. So like here, if king g8, queen h5, and it is impossible to stop the checkmate. Well, actually, I just see that there is a cute mate, for example, here, check, here, check. And then it's a really nice checkmate, since black cannot go king e7. The rook is on e1. So for that reason, king g6 is the only move here to make, and queen g4. And this is what usually happens in the Greek GIF. So for example, if d5 right now, knight e6 check is just winning the game, because with the next move, you just take on g7, or you give queen g5 check. Well, depends where your opponent goes, and it's a checkmate. So f5 is the only move, queen g3, and again, we keep this threat of knight e6. So black needs to move the queen, move the king, king f6, queen e5 check, king g6, and queen c5. And yes, black's position is pretty much hopeless because the king is naked on g6 pretty much. And materially, yes, we are down a pawn for a moment, but I mean, we are ahead of the development, and with the next move, we can capture on d4, and our attack is still alive. And it is hard to say how can the king go back to g8, because it's simply impossible. The knight on g5, we are not gonna touch that knight on g5. And guess what? There is also an idea of a4, rook a3, and rook g3, just to have in mind. You know what I mean? And you can create another discover check there. So this position is just simply losing. So for that reason, castle is not working. It is a natural move, but it is very easily winning here. So why I don't believe that castle will happen, because knight e6 seems extremely natural, actually, to my eyes. It's a very solid approach. It makes sure that there is no more attack on the e file, and the rook on e1 is not as effective as it will be after, for example, short castle. You know what I'm saying? So knight e6 and bishop d2. So this is a very strong idea. We have multiple ideas here. One of them is to push b4, b5, and making sure that the knight on c6 does not have a good square to go. And another idea is to push c3 and try to exchange those pawns, and to have the bishop on c3, from where it will keep an eye on the black's king. So let's have a look. For example, castle, I recommend here c3. So if d6, let's start with the d6, because it's a bit passive approach, because usually you understand that you are giving back a pawn, because after d6 cd, you cannot take on d4, because takes, and takes, and the rook on e1 is protecting the knight on e7. So for that reason, rook e8, it's a reasonable move, trying to protect the e7 bishop, and maybe bishop f8 in the future. And here, very strong move, rook e4. First of all, it is protecting the pawn on e4, pawn on d4, and creating this idea with queen b3 and bringing the rook to the game. Now, black's pieces are, yes, they are solid. The king is not getting attacked immediately, but it is hard to say how they are supposed to make moves. So, for example, knight f8, a logical approach, you just want to bring the bishop to the game, queen b3, and now very strong move actually, because now if bishop f5, rook e7, you can have some time here to think. Now, if knight e7, we take on e7 with the check, and then you take on f5, and we have two bishops against a rook, and with the open position, and technically it is winning, because two bishops are much better in such structures than the rook. So bishop e6 is the only move. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, if bishop f5, rook e7, if bishop d3 here, I believe that you can just take worst case scenario and take on d3, and you will stay up a piece. So bishop e6 and bishop c4. And now I have this position evaluated as plus minus, which means that white is doing very well. First of all, the pawn on b7 is hanging. Now I do want to take on b7. You can't go knight. You can't go knight a5 because my bishop is on a d2, and I'll simply take on a5. If you go knight a5 after queen b7. But again, that's not really my main idea. My main idea here is to go rook a1, h4, and go knight g5. And all these black pieces are just really poorly placed. They do not really breathe any air. There is no any counterplay. So even though you are down a pawn, it is a very good position to play as white. With the simple ideas. You just need to bring the rook, the last piece to bring to the game, and then you can have you can pay attention to h4 and knight g5 ideas. So that's about d6. It's a passive approach. It's not the most active approach because you don't really, there is no really point to give the pawn back and not to gain any activity. So at least it's better to take on c3. Yes, it is more dangerous, I believe, but at least as black, you get some counterplay because, I mean, you are 2 pawns up. So if you manage to eliminate my attack, then at the end, you will stay up 2 pawns. Bishop c3, d6, and bishop c2. Yeah, we are 2 pawns down, but nothing special is happening yet. But as you can see, I pointed out that now we want to go queen d3. And after queen d3, we force black to go g6. And after g6, we can go queen e3 and queen h6. And using these weak squares. Because, sorry, yeah, these weak squares. And if I manage to get my queen to h6 with the pawn on g6, so let's have a look. For example, I make a bad move here, 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 again, some bad move here. This is what we want to achieve. And now there are many ideas, such as rook e6, g7 is, we want to give a checkmate after rook e6. And again, black is simply paralyzed. There are many ideas. Even if not rook e6, I can go here at some point, maybe rook h4, maybe rook g4, taking on g6. So basically, if I manage to get queen to h6, it is very good position for us and close to winning. So for that reason, black needs to make a very solid, very good move, which is rook e8. The point of rook e8 is that now if I go queen d3, for example, then knight f8. And they are not going to push g6 because after g6, all those squares f6, g7, h6 are extremely weak. And after queen e3, queen h6, as you saw, the attack is deadly. So for that reason, rook e8 is a very strong move, but it does not really give black an equality. Because rook e3, another strong idea, we just want to not rush things, because now, yes, we do want to go queen d3 and double our rooks, but we just want to see what black is going to do. And the only move here, logical, is knight f8, because they need to develop this bishop as well, right? If, for example, bishop f8, then we just go queen d3, and now g6 is not an option because of an knight f6 check. So it is important to understand these little ideas, why those moves are not working. So bishop f8, even though it's logical, because you just want to kind of create some space for your pieces, right? Even though you don't really have anything here to do yet, but you just want to create some space for your pieces. That's also losing. So knight f8 is the most natural. You want to bring the bishop to the game. And now knight d4, a very strong move, and that gives white a very good position. Now our ideas are to go knight b5, attack to b7. That's wanting to understand that sometimes in positions you also need to have a couple of ideas. So for example, after knight d4, knight b5, even though it's not going to the attack, and obviously here what we want to achieve is to attack the black's king, but it is also a way of attacking. Now you basically want to go knight b5 and to take on c7. And if you take on c7, white is winning, right? So let's say if you go a6, as you saw here, another idea is knight f5 and rook g3. So if you go a6, I can go rook g3. And now this bishop is extremely powerful. And it's attacking g7 with this rook. And now my idea is to go knight f5 and create 3 attacking pieces on a g7. So this attack is extremely dangerous here. And black is in a huge trouble. So because as you can see, 1 piece, 2 piece, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 will join. 6 pieces are attacking to black's king. After rook g3, it is extremely dangerous. So this is a key move, knight d4, very important move. And it is very important to just understand here that even if you at the moment don't remember exact details, like, oh, was I supposed to go like queen c2, bishop c2, you just have to understand that if you are especially playing a blitz game, you just have to attack here. That's the plan. Your pieces, you have these 2 powerful bishops, and you need to create this idea of going queen d3 and queen e3. So it is very important to remember these details and not to just like remember move by move, because if you don't understand that you need to create an attack to the king side, then you might forget and you might make just a horrible move. So, I mean, such as, I don't know, for example, rook c1, which gives us nothing. So it is very important to remember all the ideas, to understand what's the point of bishop c2, for example. And I think this is the main move, because I think that after bishop c2, most of our opponents, they will collapse and they might allow us the chance to go queen d3 and force them to go g6. And once you force your opponent to go g6, you achieve huge success, because after that, I think it's quite easy to win the game, because you just bring your queen to h6 as it was mentioned before. And I think the attack there is extremely dangerous and almost impossible to defend. So definitely a very strong idea as well. Bishop d2 with the idea to go c3. Now, why I mentioned b4, b5 is, let's say if your opponent does something else, if they don't castle at the moment, it's an idea to keep in mind. So for example, if they go h6, you don't necessarily need to go c3 immediately. You can go b4, b5 as well, and then c3. So, but the main idea here, yes, is to go c3. So again, d4 is very strong, and after ed, bishop d3, here, to summarize ed, I can see that after knight f6, we get a very good position, I believe. Just to remind you, queen e2 check is very important to just ruin your opponent's pawn structure. And after knight c2, it is the important moment here, I believe, is to not forget that castle is losing. And after knight e6, to remember that we need to open up the position with c3. And then we get this attacking pieces. And then later on, we need to attack to the black's king side, sorry. So that's the point of this line. And after d4, there is no other move other than d6 or ed. Otherwise, we can just simply capture on e5 and get a great position, actually. Or we can go bishop d3 and force the knight to go back, or even queen e2. So that's why black needs to do something as soon as possible about this situation. And about the e5 pawn, they need to decide whether they want to take or to go d6. And so that's why d6 is, again, a very natural move. Also, this can happen in a different move order. So in case your opponent starts after knight d5, d6, d4, don't be surprised that here knight d4 is not covered, because it's a transposition. So knight d4, knight e4, d4, and d6. Bishop b5. Very strong move, pinning the knight. And we are interested in capturing on e5. So, of course, logical move is bishop d7, but there is also ed. Now, to be honest, I don't think it's very likely that anyone would go d6 and then ed. But again, it needs to be covered because we are sacrificing 2 pawns, and we need to understand why we are doing that. So queen e2, f5, only move. Otherwise, black will lose a piece. For example, if bishop f5, we can go back bishop d3 and then win the piece. So f5 only move, bishop g5, attacking the queen and forcing the queen to make only move again. Queen d7 and long castle. So now white is completely winning because this pin is simply killing black. Now rook d4, rook e4 is again mating idea. Now, as we can see, black's pieces are not developed whatsoever. And I think the strongest idea here and the most simple way is to take knight d4 in the next move and then prepare f3. So yeah, white is completely winning. Black's pieces are stuck, and it's just impossible to get rid of all these pins. And yeah, ed is simply losing. And again, after ed, it's always important to like pay attention to queen e2 checks, actually, or in this case, queen e2 pins. So queen e2, you just pin the knight, and yeah, after that, it's, I think, quite straightforward, and you just get a winning position. So ed is not a great move. Knight f6 is an option. I think that this is probably the best way in this line after d6 to play for black. And maybe even after knight d4 capture, d4, it is probably the easiest way to get too close to equal position. So bishop g5, again, pinning the knight, bishop e7, bishop c6, b takes. It is quite straightforward here, a lot of only moves. Knight e7, queen e7, d takes e5, d takes e5, and queen e2. Now, for a moment, we are down a pawn. And, well, we do want to take on e5, but not after short castle, because if we take on e5 right now, after rook e8, we will have a lot of issues. So that's why we want to go long castle. All these moves are quite logical, and they are also forced in a way. So here, black needs to do something, right? So about this e5 pawn. So, for example, if rook e8, which is the most logical, we just go rook e1, again, attacking the e5 pawn. Now, black does not have any other way to defend the e5 pawn other than playing bishop e4 and queen c4. Now, black is unable to protect c6 and e4 at the same time, because with the next move, we want to take bishop f6, force queen f6, and then we take on e4. Now, if you ask me, it's an interesting position. I don't think that computer will give white here huge advantage. I think computer will give white a slightly advantage, but again, we are not playing usually against computers. So in this position, white is really doing well, I think, from a human perspective. And with the next move, we just want to take on f6 and play on these weak pawns. If you pay attention, also c7 is extremely weak. So we are definitely going to get back one of the pawns and then continue the game on c6 and c7, because most likely we do want to get e4 back, and we will probably get it back with bishop f6 and rook e4. So this is about knight f6. It is again getting close to an equal position, but I think it is quite playable and possible to push there as white and get an advantage. So the main move here covered by me is bishop d7. Stopping the pin I think it's quite logical. Castle and knight d4 is a move, and bishop e7. So if knight d4, I think it's a crazy move actually, because it is very close to losing, but it's also not losing immediately. So if bishop d7, queen d7, knight d4, and here black has a very strong intermezzo. They don't take ed because of rook e1. And now if f5, f3, and white is just winning a piece. For that reason, c6 is the main move. Now it's an interesting situation. Black attacks on d5 knight, and they force us to move the d5 knight back. Now, if we move it back to c3, then they will take, and then they will take on d4. If we go back to e3, then ed, and we do not have rook e1 as an option. For that reason, we are being creative here, and we play knight f4. Yeah, I know it's a bit strange, but now black cannot take on f4 nor on d4, because after rook e1 and f3, we'll win the piece. So for that reason, black goes knight f6. And now, even though it's very tempting to go rook e1, it's not a great move because of long castle, and then our knights, oops, I'm sorry. Our knights are simply under attack and we cannot defend them. So for that reason, we have to give the piece back. So knight h5, but in order we get a huge compensation. Knight h5, queen h5, ed, rook e1 check, and now we force black to play king d8, because if not king d8, if, for example, bishop e7, bishop g5, and white is going to win the e7 bishop, since there is no f6 as an option, because the queen is on h5 and it attacks on e8. So that's why king d8 is only move, queen h4 check, king c7, queen d4, and white has a very strong compensation. Black pieces are not developed, and it is very difficult to understand how black is going to develop the pieces, because if black moves this bishop, then this is hanging. And if the black tries to go rook e8, then this is hanging in the future. And how black is going to develop this rook? That's also a very good question. And so all these questions together are showing why this position is tough to play as black. And also we do have ideas such as, b4, a4, b5, just trying to open up the king's position and making sure that, as it is, I think it is obvious that black's king is not the safest piece here. So we need to create an attack as soon as possible and create weaknesses there. And objectively, this position is very good for white. So that's about the knight d4 line, which I don't think will happen. And I think even if your opponent goes knight d4, it is very unlikely that they will go c6 because ed is very natural, but it's a natural losing move, but it is, it is very likely that it will happen. So for that reason, the main move here is bishop e7, rook e1, and if f5 here, which is a bit strange move. I think it's usually liked by engines, but even in this case, it's not the case. We just go bishop c4. Very good idea. Again, there is no bishop e6. As you remember probably from queen e2 part, there is, after f5 line, there is this knight c7 idea. So knight c7, again, wins the game because here black king is stuck in the center. And again, we attack f5 pawn. And now we have ideas bishop f5, even if they protect with the piece, such as rook f8. But we will just attack, and black cannot just castle whatsoever. So for that reason, bishop e6 is not an option. Short castle is also not an option because of knight e7, and it's a double check. And if black just makes a random move, that's what we are trying to do. We just want to push b4, bishop b2, and putting pressure on e5 pawn, because then we will have 3 attacking pieces. 1, 2, the bishop is on b2 already, and the pawn on d4. And the key here is that we do not allow black to go short castle. And even though they are up a pawn, they do not really have a simple way to go for a short castle. So for example, even if queen c8, it is very important, you go b4, bishop e6, now you may think, oh, but now e6 is protected, but no. You again you force black to make a queen move, and then you take on e6. So after bishop c4, it is impossible for black to castle. That's why f5 is not a great move, although it might seem like it's a good move, but it's not. So knight f6 is the logical retreat. And after knight e7, well, you can't really take queen e7 because of bishop, because my rook is on e1, and after taking on c6 and taking on e5, it's disaster there. So knight e7 is the best. D takes e5, d takes e5, and bishop d3. Now we will capture the e5 pawn, and we most likely will get advantage thanks to our 2 bishops. So this is where the line ends of knight e4 and d4, I believe. So the key point to take from this line is that after d4, there are 2 moves, ed, bishop d3. The most important details to remember, I would say, is knight f6, queen e2 check, knight c5, castle here, and bishop d2 with the c3 idea. I believe this is the most important. And if your opponent decides to go d6, then bishop b5 is important to remember. And I think bishop d7 is the most natural. Castle, bishop e7, rook e1, knight f6, and the main line here, which we just covered. So bishop d3, and with the next move, black cannot save this pawn because we have 1, 2 attackers, and we'll capture on e5 with the knight, and we'll have the 2 bishops advantage with the great game because the position is open, and we can use the 2 bishops to put pressure on black. So this is knight e4, d4. Again, I've talked about queen e2. I think here both options are great. They are very playable. If you are playing this line all the time regularly, you can switch time to time. So like time to time, you can go queen e2. And then if you feel like your opponent is already preparing against you, then you can switch to d4. I think both lines are very playable, very aggressive actually as well. So definitely it's a very good line to play for a win. And but there are a lot of other moves as well. And let's have a look at knight d5. This is a common approach because it's a very well-known idea. This idea, but it is very well known, I think, among grandmasters. So I would say that I have faced this couple of times. Why this is very well known? Because of this. Let me explain to you why this is very well known. Because of this line and e5. This is very common. So it's kind of similar to what is here. That's why knight d5 takes and e4 is quite logical. But I think it does not equalize, and it gives us a very easy game. So d takes c6, e takes f3, queen takes f3, d takes c4, and bishop c4. In this case, white is ahead of the development. Now f7 is hanging, and we have two developed pieces. And queen e7 check, logical check. They just want to make sure that we're gonna play like queen e3 or bishop e2, but king d1, extremely strong move. Now the idea is to bring the rook to e1, so black needs to do something. Now there is a very tricky move here, h5. I think that you should be very happy to see this move. Not because rook e1 is winning the game. No, rook e1 is in fact losing because of bishop g4. But because maybe your opponent is so smart that they planned to play after h3, bishop g4. Now I want you to pause the video and think what you are supposed to do. Yes, it's hg, hg, and queen f7 check. Now you can't defend on h1. Your queen is hanging, and it seems like, wow, black did just something genius. But no. Queen f7, intermezzo, very strong check. And now after takes, rook h8, you are just upper rook and you will win the game. So h5 doesn't really do much other than just weakening a square. So bishop e6 is the only move here. And after bishop e6, we just take. Now black would wish to be able to capture with the queen, but it's not possible. So for that reason, black needs to take with the pawn. And rook e1, simply bringing the rook to the game and making sure that we are going to attack to e6 pawn. And that's why rook e1 is the best. A long castle, queen e4, rook e8, and d3. Now, yeah, I do have a lot of ideas here for white. I believe that we can take it off f3, but basically our goal is to fight on e6 pawn. And how we want to achieve that is by playing c3, king to c2, and developing the bishop to d2, and then doubling the rooks to e5. So with rook e2, rook e1, and then you can change the queen's position. So you can go queen c4 or maybe queen g4, and then make sure that the rooks are the pieces are going to take on e6. So this position, I think, is really very good after d3. And let's take some errors back. So yeah. Because black is simply going to struggle the whole game. There is no counterplay for black other than just they have to like sit tight and try to defend the e6 pawn the whole game. And I think even though it's possible probably not to lose the e6 pawn, but when you put pressure so much on e6, they just have to defend the whole game. And that's really what we want to achieve. We just want to put pressure and win the game slowly, right? So it's a great position to have. And I think even though this is a common idea among the strong players, it's not really working here because we just get a good position. And I think in this line, it's important to remember that after this check, we just go king d1. So you don't just automatically be like, oh, it's a check, let's cover it. So with queen e3. No, king d1 is very strong, and you do not need to be worried that, oh, my king is on the center, because the king is quite safe. And if you look at it, the black rooks are going to defend the e6 pawn. So they simply have no way to attack the d1 king, and there are simply not enough resources for black to do that. So this line is good as well for white. And but there's again knight d4. Interesting move. Now we are unable to capture on e5 because of queen e7 and then d6. So we just take queen e2 check. Well, this is a very good move because now if you look at the position, it's a symmetry. And usually in a symmetry, it leads to a draw, right? But with this move, we are managing to avoid that. So queen e2 check. I know it might look strange because why do we give a check? What about bishop e7, right? It's a logical question. And here, very strong move, d6. Forcing black to take cd and queen f3, opening up the bishop's diagonal. Now we want to go here or we want to go here. But just have a look at this pawn structure. Let's take these arrows back. Let's have a look at this pawn structure. Yeah, we are down a pawn, but is it really that bad? And let's have a look at this c8 bishop as well. So this position, I think, even though computer gives a slight edge for white, slight edge, like it gives like plus equal, but I believe it's plus minus in a practical term, because here it is so simple to play as white. We just go castle, b3, bishop b2, and when we capture one pawn, it's not the end for black, because once we capture to d4 with this bishop, and then there are these two pawns left as well. And I really don't know how black is going to play here. I think in a practical terms, it is simply winning for white. Just positionally, this position is winning. And it is quite easy to play as well. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make, that I always try to get positions that are, even when they are complicated, it is also complicated for the other side. But I think here it's not complicated for us, but it is definitely complicated for black because they have to figure out how to defend the d4 pawn and so on. So that's about bishop e7. And I think bishop e7 is a horrible move, and we should be very happy to face bishop e7. And queen e7, keeping the symmetry is the strongest. b3. I believe that this is the only way to fight for an advantage. So obviously after b3, the logical question will be, what about b6? Well, they do what we do. Bishop b2, bishop e7, right? And queen e7. Now, bishop e7 and bishop d4. Now, if you look at this pawn is hanging. And now if you don't capture on d5, I can go c4, or I can go bishop c4, up to you. So if bishop d5, bishop g7, rook g8. Now you may think that, oh, but after bishop e5, g2 is hanging. Yes, it is hanging. But after bishop g2, oh, I'm sorry. After bishop g2, rook g2, bishop g3, and we simply trap the rook. And we'll win the game quite easily, actually, after that. So after all this symmetry, we break the symmetry and we win a pawn because of this trick after bishop e5. And in fact, after bishop g2, if you not feel like capturing the rook, you can also do this. It's also winning because of the pin, and black cannot save the bishop on g2. So that's how the symmetry does not work in this case. But there is also a good move, g6. The point of g6 is this is the NG's favorite move. The idea is to defend this pawn, and I think it's quite logical as well. But I think that white again gets a comfortable position after this. Bishop b2, forcing bishop g7 and d6. It is quite similar to the same idea as in bishop e7, d6, and the idea is the same. Bishop e2, cd, and white has better pawn structure. And once we capture one of these pawns, we gonna play forever till we capture at least 2 pawns on the d file. So even though now we are down a pawn, let's say after short castle, we can go h4, and we can even create an attack with h5 and rook h4, attacking this pawn, and also trying to create some sort of attack here, because as if you can see, these pieces are not developed. And it is very hard to say how the c8 bishop will be developed, since, for example, if after h4, d5, right? What black is aiming is d6 and bishop e6. We simply go bishop f3, and this pawn is impossible to defend. So those are the details that I believe, even though computer gives with the correct play here and equality, I don't think that it's equal in a practical terms. I think it's much harder to be black here because of the pawn structure, just simply. Like if black pawn was here, that would be an amazing position for black. But since all 3 pawns are on the d file, I think that practically white is doing very well. So this is about the knight d5 line. I think it is very possible to face this, but again, I think we will get a good position with both with e4 and with knight d4. It is a bit different type of position than when black was capturing on e4. It was after knight d5, ed, it's a bit more positional. So after knight d4, you see that we are playing on this 3 d pawns. Mostly that's what we are trying to achieve. After e4, we are creating this e6 weakness. So in both cases, it's a bit positional. But I think even if you consider yourself not a positional player, by the way, don't do that. I am sure you are great. I think it is quite easy to play there and quite easy to put pressure there as white, because you have many options, and I believe that it's a risk-free game. So you're not really risking to lose unless you, as long as you follow the ideas that I gave you there. Now let's have a look at bishop c5. Obviously, a very natural move, and definitely one of the strongest options that black has in this position. And now it's a bit different, the position. The lines here are not as easy to understand as in knight e4 or knight d5. For example, in after knight e4, it is quite easy to understand that you need to do some things such as queen e2, d4, and in case of knight d5, it is obvious that you should capture on d5. So now it's the moment that we understand what knight d5 is truly about. We covered the 2 most important moves, knight e4 and knight d5. Those are the logical moves that you should understand. So I sacrifice the pawn. What is going to happen when my opponent captures it? And if the piece trade is beneficial for me or for my opponent. So those moves are covered. And now it's time to understand what is happening after the logical developing moves, such as bishop c5. So bishop c5, c3. Very interesting move. The idea is to go d4 and to grab the center. It already looks dangerous because already black needs to make some sort of decision. And there are 2 moves here. that we are going to take a look at. One is short castle, and another is knight takes e4. So let's have a look at knight takes e4 first. This is actually, I think, it's probably one of the best ways to play as black. So d4, ed, and bishop d3. This is quite similar as the line with knight e4, d4, ed, bishop d3. Just the bishop is not on f8, and our pawn is not on c3. I mean, over there. So here, knight f6, only move since we attacked the knight. Queen e2 check. Again, it's very typical in this type of positions, as we have already seen. And now with bishop e7, again, we managed to damage the pawn structure. And after g takes, knight d4, c d4, d5, and after short castle, white wants to just develop the bishop to f4, rook to e1, and even though, again, we sacrificed the pawn and currently we are down a pawn, black does not really have a good way to develop the pieces. So, for example, if, I mean, black can technically develop the bishop, but they cannot really go for short castle because of this pawn structure that they have over here. And also white will have this strong attack with queen h5. And if black decides to go for long castle, then the c file, in fact, is open. So we can have this type of attack with the bishop on f4. So this position is not great. And bishop e7 is not really the most challenging move. The best move here is king f8. And it's in a way... it is already an achievement because black is not going to castle at all. So knight f6, queen f6, and short castle. We sacrifice another pawn on c3 because in this case, the main goal is the activity. So like if black is going to go for the pawn, yes, we are happy with that. We are willing to sacrifice the c3 pawn as well. But currently we want to go rook e1 as it is mentioned, and with the idea to give a checkmate from e8 square since it is going to be protected. So let's have a look at DC, a natural approach, of course. Rook e1, threatening queen e8, queen d8, b takes c3, d6, and here it's a very important move here. And in this structure, it's a very common idea, so you will learn it. And it's playing bishop g5. The idea of bishop g5 is to create another weakness by forcing black to go f6. So you may think, why f6 and why not, let's say, queen d7 if f6 is a weakness? If queen d7, then currently you can just stop the video and think about the position because there is a move that wins the game. And that move is bishop f5. Yeah, bishop f5 forces the black queen to capture on f5, and queen e8 is a checkmate. And if not, then we capture the queen and we win the game. So f6 is the only move. Bishop e3, forcing this trade, because if black does not capture, then we will capture on c5. And later on, the d file will be open. So we'll bring the rook and we'll have even more counterplay. So that's not really what black wants to allow us. So bishop e3, queen e3. Currently, we are down 2 pawns. But if we look at the position, I believe that it is much easier to be white. So with the next move, white is going to play bishop e4. And as you can see, black king is weak. f6 made it even more weak. And our plan is to go bishop e4 and make this c4, c5 push work. With the support of the rook from a d1, We want to create a weakness and open up the position as much as possible. So this position technically is equal. And I believe that going to this line is probably the best what black can do. But again, it is very complicated. And if you know the ideas and you play them correctly, and I think it is possible to get a good position. But we should also know that after e4, e5, getting a advantage is literally impossible if your opponent plays everything correctly. So getting an equal position is what everybody is aiming for nowadays. Just getting equal but playable position. And this is definitely a playable position where it is not easy to be black whatsoever. So definitely an interesting position to play. Your pieces are active, and I think it's more fun to be white since you are attacking, and black is the one that needs to be defend. And if the position is equal while you are down 2 pawns, it means that you definitely have a great compensation, and this position is equal according to the computers. So this is the DC line, and the other lines are actually quite similar. So if queen e7, for example, we are not going to trade the queens, obviously, because currently we are down 2 pawns, and we do need to keep the queens since that's our goal. We want to attack in the future black's king. So DC3, rook e1, forcing the black king to go back, black queen to go back to d8, and BC, d6, bishop g5. Again, very similar to the previous line, forcing black to go f6, and we go back to e3. And after captures, now the idea is a bit different. Again, it is actually possible if you want to go bishop e4 and c4. But in this case, it is much better to focus on this idea, which is bishop c4, and with the idea to play queen d5. And it is actually quite hard to stop queen f7 checkmate if you manage to achieve that with bishop c4 and queen d5. But even if black manages to stop somehow the bishop c4, the queen d5 and queen f7 idea, then you will still go bishop c4 and then queen d5. And if they manage to stop f7 checkmate, then you just bring the rook to e1. And as you can see, the black king is extremely weak, and the idea is pretty much the same. We are just going to play active game. Our plan is to try to give a checkmate to our opponent, and there are a few things that we should focus on. We do not want to trade many pieces unless it gives us a huge advantage, and also we do not want to trade queens because we are currently down 2 pawns, and with no queens we have no compensation, while with queens the position is very complicated. I believe in this case, because of bishop c4 and queen d5, white is practically better and much easier to play as white. So definitely this line is very playable as well. I think for black, it is probably better to take DC than going for this line. But since we are covering this course for white, we are definitely happy to see move 10, queen e7. Another option is d6, which is the main line, in my opinion. And bishop g5, again, quite usual. We just attack the queen, queen e6, queen c2, and d takes c4, d takes c3, and knight e5 are the moves here. So let's start from the knight e5. The idea is quite obvious. Black wants to capture on f3 and make sure that our pawn structure is also ruined. But and also they attack to d3 bishop, so it is quite a good move. And the main plan of knight e5 is that they just want to simplify the game. So basically, if we take on d4, bishop d4, cd, knight d3, queen d3, and let's say queen f5, and the attack is gone. We are down a pawn. the position is probably still around equal, but definitely we are not fighting for advantage anymore. So that's the whole point of 95, that it's aiming to simplify the game and making sure that it's very safe. But in this case, we are not going after the pawn. We capture on e5. And yes, we do let black have this strong center after d. And now it seems that black has achieved everything. They got this strong center. But it's not really the case, because after rook a1, if we look at the position for a bit, we will see that it is quite hard actually to be black here, because our idea is quite simple. We just want to go f4 and, well, go to king h1 just to avoid all these tricks. For example, let's say if black goes a6, it's just a bad move. I'm showing you an example. You do not need to go f4 immediately. You need to go king h1, because if you go f4, it's just a mistake that you should know how to avoid. e4. Yeah, it does look a bit crazy, but after rook e4, queen e4. Bishop e4 and d3 check, and black wins the queen. And if bishop e4 and then d3 immediately. So basically, this is the only trick that black has in this position. So you need to be very focused in this moment to make sure that f4, if you play f4, it means it's you need to make sure that after e4 you have a good response. And if you don't see any good response, it means that you should go king h1 next move, and then f4. And once you manage to open up with f4 and capture, these rooks are going to be super active, and the king here is extremely weak. So this position, again, according to the computers, it's equal. But I think that practically it's still better to be white. So for example, if d takes on c3, you can just ignore and go king h1 and start your attack. I believe that in a blitz game, it's an easy win for white, if you ask me, because it is much harder usually to defend than to just attack, especially when you know the ideas how to attack. So definitely 95 is an interesting move, but I think it gives us better chances. So d takes c3 is the main move, and I believe the most logical one. Rook fe1, forcing the black queen to go back to d7, and b takes c3. So now, again, the position is quite similar, with the ideas are quite similar. At some point, black needs to push our bishop away. So once they do that, we can just go back and we trade this. And as you can see in this position, the errors are showing that our idea is to go bishop e3, trade these pieces, bring the rook to d1, and have this c4, c5 push. Now, black is unable to make moves with this rook, and the king is always going to be in a not the best position. Of course, black would prefer to have the king here and the rook to the f8, and but it's simply impossible. So again, white is down 2 pawns, but the idea is quite simple. You just want to bring the rook to d1 and exchange the bishops and make this c4, c5 push, and to open up the position as much as possible. So again, all these positions are quite difficult to play from both sides. I need to be honest. I don't think it's easy to play from any side here. But if you like attacking, if you like to have this complicated type of positions, I think knowing the idea of the position will help you to play better. And this is basically the idea. We need to exchange the strongest piece that black has, and we need to open up as much the position as possible. So this was knight e4. I mean, it's not a bad move, obviously, but it leads to a very complicated positions. Usually, after knight e4, what we have to know as white is that most likely we are going to get at least one pawn, or in some cases, even 2 pawns down positions. Uh, but the main ideas usually are that once you get it, you need to create some weakness by playing bishop g5, forcing f6, and then we need to trade the active pieces. I mean, we need to trade our bishop with the most active black piece, which is the bishop on c5, and then we need to open up the position. So after knight e4, be mentally ready that you will be down 2 pawns, but don't worry, because usually in all these positions, the evaluation is equal. White is not worse, neither is black, but it's very playable position. And as you can guess, usually when you are up a material and the position is equal, it means that the opposite side has a good compensation. So that's about knight e4. And as I said, now we do want to go d4. So basically, if our opponent makes a bad move by playing d6, we just go d4, bishop b6, and bishop g4, and we pin this knight. And with the next one, we can take with the bishop or with the knight even. And we create this horrible pawn structure. Again, black will not be able to castle short. And I mean, it's just terrible position to have. So basically, this is the whole point. After bishop c5, we want to go c3. But there is a very strong move for black, and that's its castle. So why this is strong? Because here d4 does not work, unfortunately. So if d4, I believe that it's actually maybe a good try for blitz games if you want to test your opponent, because what black needs to find here is extremely hard. Like, for example, I think in most of our games, probably what will happen is ED, CD, and maybe like, I don't know, bishop here and bishop g5, and white is winning there. But there is very strong tactical resource here for black, and that is knight d4. And now white needs to capture on d4. And knight d5, ed, and queen h5. Now, we cannot move the knight because f2 is hanging. So the bishop is here, very powerful, the queen is here, and they attack our d4 knight. So right now, it seems like white is still winning, and they got control under everything. So because of bishop e3, right? But there is rook e8, and now, as you can see, it is impossible to protect rook e3 and bishop d4 or queen d4 at the same time. So for example, if white goes to g3, then queen d4 is winning a piece and getting very good position for black. So for that reason, d4 is not a good move here. But I believe, again, that this tactical resource is very hard to find if you don't know. So maybe 1-2 games you guys can try. And if your opponent finds out, then it's bad. But it's also, it can also give you an easy win, because if they don't see it with the next move, you just go bishop g5 and you just take on f6 and you start an attack. So I believe that d4 is maybe worth to give a shot, 1 game, 2 game maximum, but not more. So the main move here is d3. Well, now I know that it might seem like this is a bit passive, but don't worry, because first of all, your opponent has to understand that castle is a good move. Because trust me, it looks quite scary when your opponent has d4, like here. So that's why castle is not an easy move. You should understand that. It's very hard for your opponent to come up with castle, because d4 is very strong. But even after d3, you still have threats. So first of all, you want to go bishop g5. So if they make a casual move, d6, then bishop g5, and white is, I think white is just winning, because now you just want to take, bring the knight, bring the queen, and again, black will have this weak pawn structure with the weak king on g8. So for that reason, black usually goes h6. And now is the moment that it seems like black managed to achieve everything what they wanted. And but it's not the case. Knight f6, queen f6, and g4. Very strong move, extremely strong move. The idea is to launch an attack to the black's king by pushing g5 and opening up the g file for our rook. So there are two moves that I covered. One is knight e7, which is the engine's recommendation, and one is queen d8. So if you ask me, I don't believe that knight e7 is possible to find for a human being, because it is a very complicated move. The point is that you just want to go queen b6 and attack to f2 pawn after g5. So let's see what is happening. g5 takes bishop g5 and queen b6. Now the point is that black wants to, well, first of all, black is attacking to f2 and to b2. And another idea is that they want to push f6, push our bishop away, and then push d5. And after that, our attack is more or less gone. So now we need to do something special. So d4, ed, b4. Now, if we take cd, bishop b4 check, and with the next move d5, black is having enough time to develop all the pieces. And again, we should save every tempo, and we should make sure that we are not giving black much time to develop. And by that, we play b4, forcing the bishop to go back to d6. And by bishop on d6, the bishop on c8 is also unable to join to the game. So that's actually very important. Bishop d6 and bishop c4. Again, it's a very dynamic position, as you can guess. We sacrifice another pawn. So dc and a3. Now, I think this position is, according to the computers, it is equal, but again, I think it's just super hard to beat black. So, for example, if black goes knight g6, we just go rook g1, and now we have such threats like go bishop f6 with the idea to take rook g6, or bishop e3, again to take on g6. And if, let's say, knight d5, again bishop f6, and we attack to g7 with the rook. So basically, this is our plan. It's actually quite easy. We just want to go rook g1, and you want to play rook g1 first, and then you want to see whether you want to go here, or you cannot go bishop f6 or bishop a6, but you can go maybe bishop e3, and then the knight can go to g5. So there are a lot of ideas, and I think the fact that the bishop here is poorly placed, and the bishop here is stopping the developing for black, is helping us a lot. And like, let's say if black had an opportunity to play d5, they would go d5, and they would develop the bishop, they would develop the rook, and black will be simply much better. But in this case, even though we are down 2 pawns, I think that white's attack is extremely strong. And after rook g1, in fact, let's take some arrows out so you will see more. So after rook g1, there is also an idea to go knight h4, in fact. And in some cases, maybe you can even take and go knight f5, or you can bring the queen, or you can bring the queen to g4. So a lot of ideas after a3, just to defend the b4 pawn and to save more tempos. I believe that a5 was the best move, And I think after rook g1, there are some super complicated lines, but usually black is the one that needs to find all these correct moves. And as white, you just need to attack. You just need to go rook g1 and pay attention to all these moves: bishop f6, bishop h6, bishop e3, then moves with the knights. So I think it's quite easy to be white here and very difficult as black. I would be extremely scared here as black. So definitely it is a good choice to play this as white. So, but the more natural move, to be honest, I don't think that knight e7 will happen in our games. I think queen d8 is very natural, just going back and making sure that after g5, there is a way to play h5 and close the position. Now, if, for example, hg, we take knight g5, now queen h5 is a huge threat. G6, the only way to stop queen h5, and h4, and this is basically a dream scenario for white, because with the next one we'll just open up the position, and this is just super dangerous for black, since our queen also will join the attack, and it's definitely not what black wants to do. So h5 and knight h4, attacking the h5 pawn with the queen. Sorry. Attacking the h5 pawn with the queen and forcing black to go g6, bishop g2. Now, bishop g2 is very important because black wanted to go d5, but now we stop d5 and we keep the control of the center in our hands. So now there are two natural moves. One is bishop e7 and one is d6. Bishop e7, obviously you just want to attack the pawn, and you kind of ask a question, how are you going to defend your pawn? And queen d2 is actually a very simple way to do that. I know it's usually the queen d2 is being played when the bishop is on e3, but in this case it's completely safe. And after d6, short castle, and white is simply dominating, because with the next move, white will go to f4, and if black does not take on f4, then we will push f5, and then f6, and then we'll just take this. No, okay, jokes aside, we can just push till f5, and maybe black will do something about it. But when the push is on, when the pawn is on f5, when we have these two pawns, when we have two pawns here and here, our position is simply dominating, because black pieces are not moving. If you see, after the pawn is on f5, the bishop on c8 is stuck. The bishop on e7 is already about to get trapped. Pawn on g6 is hanging. So basically, after f4, let's say we make a bad move. I mean, we make a logical move. f4, black needs to take, and after queen f4, we just push d4 next move, and we get full control over the center. Black does not have any counterplay. The knight is beautifully placed on h4 because it stops all the f5 stuff, because g6 is hanging. So, and that's the whole point of this line, usually. That's why d6 is, I think, better, but it still does not equalize. f4, again, allowing f5 is unacceptable, because again we attack on again after f5 we attack to g6, and after f5 we attack to g6, and black needs to defend it somehow with the king on h7 usually. And then, as you see with the yellow error, there is bishop f3 and bishop h5 idea, which is actually pretty hard to stop, almost impossible. And that will lead white into a winning position. So for that reason, allowing f5 is not acceptable, and black needs to take on f4. And very nice move, bishop f4, and we get full control over the center. Our ideas are to push d4, and later on, well, you go short castle. You can even go long castle if you wish for, but I think going short castle is better. So going to short castle, and then queen d2 and bringing the rook to ae1 is what we want to achieve. And again, black does not have counterplay, and we will get control over the center. And the only counterplay of black is by going f5 or f6, but in this case, it doesn't really work. Again, because the g6 is hanging, and the pawn is not on h7. If the pawn was on h7, yeah, maybe f6 was a counterplay, but here, white is simply going to dominate. So yeah, this is about the h6 move, which is very natural, but it's also, I think it's it's a bad move. It's not a good move. I mean, it's not going to help black to survive it's not going to help black to solve all the tactical issues with bishop g5, because then we will get to this g4, g5, and again, black needs to work out how to play against this g5 idea. So I think after h6, we should be very happy. But the best move here, I think, that gives solid position for black is knight d5, and after ed, knight e7, and knight d5, and knight d5. So here, after d4, bishop e7, bishop queen f3, sorry, knight f6, bishop d3, d6, knight c4. Yes, white is slightly better, but I think this is the best in this line, that black, after bishop c5, and if they decide to if they decide to go castle here, after d3, I think that this is the best option. It is slightly passive for black. White has control over the center for a moment. This bishop is not being developed yet, since b7 is hanging. So there are some technical issues. White's pieces are for a moment placed better. Obviously, next, what we want to do is to go short castle, bring the bishop to the game, maybe through g5, maybe through f4, depends. If our opponent pushes d5, then the bishop on f4 is much better. So, and then take control over the e file with the rooks. So definitely white has some space, and white is slightly better. But I think for black, it is better if you play castle to play knight d5 here than h6, because after h6, I think just the attack with knight f6, queen f6, g4 is really powerful, and it's very hard to deal with there. So definitely knight d5 is the move that is more close to a boring positional type of position. But again, I think it's better, and yeah, as you can see, we do have control over the center, and it is slightly better. But it's different because we are not aiming to create an attack. It's just that we have more space, and we just want to take control over the e file and play more positional, slow, grinding game. So that's about bishop c5, and yes, I believe we covered bishop c5 after bishop c5 everything. And now let's get to the bishop e7. Another very logical move. I have faced this move a lot. I think I faced mostly bishop e7 and knight e4. So bishop e7 is definitely one of the main moves to cover. And here we are making a very awkward looking move, and that is bishop d3. Yes, and bishop d3 is indeed a bit strange looking move. But the idea is to go c3 and go back bishop c2. So the idea is actually quite logical, but the move itself looks really awkward. So castle, c3, d6, and bishop c2. Now, usually, my opponents here play bishop e6. And this is definitely the most natural move. There is also knight d5, which I believe is the main suggestion of the computer. So let's have a look at knight d5, and then we'll check bishop e6, because I believe that bishop e6 is the main move, even though knight d5 is what computer suggests, but we are mostly the humans. They just want to go bishop e6 to make sure that you will make some move with the knight. So for that reason, I believe that bishop e6 needs more attention. And I think that after bishop e7, this is the key position. And most of them will go either knight d5 or bishop e6. I think bishop e6 is more likely to happen. So let's start with the knight d5 first, and then we'll get to the main move. So ed, knight b8, d4. And now, well, black does not want to capture on d4, because then it means that they just gave away the whole center to us for free. So knight d7. Now what black wants to do is to push f5 and e4 at some point and have control over the center. Castle, f5, and d takes e5. Very strong move. White should not allow black to push e4, because then not only they will have a strong center, but also the d5 pawn will be weak. So d, queen e2, and now attacking the d6 pawn. Now there's two moves. Bishop d6 is one, and e4. Now let's start with e4. Knight d4, it allows us, knight d4, it allows us the opportunity to jump to e6 in the next move. Knight f6, knight e6, takes. And now white has this amazingly strong pawn, and guess what? Black is unable to capture it at any time soon, because white will go bishop b3, rook d1, and well, at some point we will develop our dark square bishop somewhere, maybe g5. I think g5 is a quite good square. f4 is also a good square for the bishop, but definitely having this pawn is a huge advantage. Also, it is if you feel like that these pawns are quite annoying for you, you can always make this push and destroy this pawn structure. So definitely those are the ideas to keep in mind while you are playing this position. But be very confident, because this position is good for you, practically, definitely. So I believe that white is better after e4. So bishop d6, again, it allows us to go knight g5. Now we'll go to knight e6 from different road. And if knight f6, knight e6, takes, e6, e4, and f3, and white is better. Again, this is quite similar to the previous line, where we can destroy these pawn structures with f3. So now after f3, white is doing extremely well. So for that reason, the main move here is to go queen e8, knight e6, rook f7, and I believe here c4. And now if knight f8, we just go c5 and we win a piece, because after knight e6 or bishop e6, we will just take, and then black will have d6 and f7 hanging at the same time. And if knight c5, again, logical move, trying to make sure that this knight is not going to stay on e6 for a very long time. But here, just knight g5, rook f8, and b4. And with the next one, we just push c5, and we get, again, the knight to e6 square. So for that reason, after c4, black should go e4 and bishop e3. And I believe that white is doing extremely well. our ideas is our idea is to push c5. It is quite very straightforward, and to keep the knight on e6 as long as possible. So basically, after c5, we force this bishop to go away, and then c7 will be hanging, or if bishop e5, then we can maybe even push f4, and then again force ef, and after that, obviously, black does not have any more this strong pause. And it is very important actually in this position to keep in mind that after b6, which is quite logical because we just want, as black, we just want to stop c5 push. Now, again, you do not need to care about it because you can push b4, and after bishop b4, c7 is hanging, and after c7, you attack to the queen, and you will most likely capture the rook with the next move since black will move the queen away. So again, b6 does not stop b5 because you just push b4. So that's just an idea to not forget about. So I believe that this was yes, I believe that this was queen e8 was the best move here, but yeah, it still gives us an advantage. And so bishop e6 is the best move. I mean, sorry, it's not the best move, but it's the most common move. It forces white to make a decision about the d5 knight, because d5 knight is quite annoying for black, so they just want to make sure that they force the knight to take on f6 or e7. Well, we take on e7 because it gives us two bishops advantage. So queen e7, obviously a logical way. Black wants to take with the queen to have d5 with the next move, and short castle and d5. So there is a good story here. I was playing in a World Open against a very young and talented American. I believe he's already an international master. I do not remember his name at the moment, but yeah, he's improving quite rapidly. And here I had my preparation, but I forgot what I was supposed to do. And I played d3. And I got slightly worse, and I barely made a draw. So do not play d3 here, please. Just d4. Very strong move. And let me tell you why I did not like d4 during the game. I simply thought that after ed, e5, knight e4, cd, black will have bishop g5, bishop g4. And I was correct. After bishop g4, there's a pin, and f6 is coming, and it is really hard to play here as white. I believe that black is even better here. So I was like, okay, I don't like this position. What am I supposed to do? And I just went for d3, even though I knew that there is an advantage for white, but I did not really know how. So d4, ed, e5, knight e4, and knight d4 is the way to go. So here, well, white wants to push the knight with f3, and then maybe you can go f3, force the knight back, and then go f4, and then go f5, and create a attack. But e5 pawn is hanging, right? So black can capture on e5, f3, knight f6, rook e1, and now let's say if black goes to knight d7 or knight g6. Knight g6 after f4, you can stop the video for a second and understand that here after f5, next move, black does not have a way to defend against f5. So same is with the knight d7. f4, f5 is unstoppable. So and then we win a piece. So for that reason, knight c6 is the only move, because after f4 they will be able to capture on d4 and then move the queen from away from the pin. But here is my favorite idea from this line is knight c6, b takes c6, and queen d4. It's a very strong move, extremely strong move. And the main idea here is to go queen h4. And after queen h4, so let's say after c5, queen h4, the idea here is to take on h7, first of all. As you can see, black cannot capture back because queen e7. I will take the queen. So rook f8, protecting the queen. Bishop g5, h6, because now again I want to take on h7. h6, bishop h6 takes queen h6. And again, black cannot move the knight because of queen h8, queen h7, queen h8 checkmate. And now white just wants to go rook e5 and rook g5 checkmate. And black would really wish to play queen f8, and that's actually probably the only move, but it does not help them because queen f6, and after queen g7, you can even, if you feel like, you can even trade the queens, but you can simply go back to f4 or h4 and continue the attack with the winning position, even though white is up just a pawn. But I think it's just simply winning for white. I think queen f4 is the best, just to keep this idea alive. So white is completely winning. So if rook f8 immediately, again we go queen h4 and bishop g5 is unstoppable. So again, after h6, you can simply capture on h6 and take, and then you bring the rook to the attack, and there's nothing black can really do about it. So this is very good idea. I believe that I have a game here as well, which I've covered in one of the model games. You can check it out. So definitely a very good idea, very strong one, and very hard to understand why it's so good. Because during a practical game, you may think that what's the big deal? If he wants to go bishop g5, I will just go h6 and stop it. But after bishop h6, it's almost all the time white is winning. So that's what I missed during the game. That's what I did not really understand, that this position is so good with queen d4 and so on. But now I've worked on it more, and now you have the information, so you will play better than I did in that game. So after bishop e6, knight e7, queen e7, and yes, the key, if d takes e4, it's also a possibility, but that's not really what I was worried about. Knight e5, and now white has two bishops advantage. Black cannot really capture on e5 because white will take it back, and then e4 will be hanging because the knight is the one who is defending e4 pawn. And right now, if if black does not take on e5, we just want to go bishop g4, bishop g5, pin the knight and the queen, and then push f4, or here f4 immediately. And white is simply having very good position here. So for example, if h6, stopping bishop g5, you can just push f4, and then maybe even f5, bishop join with f4 from f4, and white is simply dominating. So definitely d takes on e5 was not the issue for me. Ed is far more natural. So in this line, the most important for you is to remember that you need to take with the knight, not with the pawn, because if you take with the pawn, bishop g4 is bad. So you need to take with the knight, and knight e5, f3, and yes, you do need to remember this f4 idea, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense. You just give up a pawn for nothing. But no, you always have this f4. So knight c6 is the only move, and then queen d4 is another very important key moment. And after this, I believe that if you remember the ideas, you will win the game quite easily, and no matter who your opponent is, actually. So this is about the bishop e6. I think that after bishop e7, this is the main position that you will have, and bishop e6 is extremely natural. I can tell from my experience that I believe that this is the most common line that is happening when I'm playing this line, because let's understand why bishop e7 is being played. Every time when you go knight d5, it is usually the first time that your opponent sees this line, and they think that, okay, he has something prepared after bishop c5, so let's play something solid. And usually by solid, they go bishop e7, because they don't really think that bishop d3 is going to be good. It's a really awkward looking move, but it's actually a very good one. So that's why bishop e7 is very popular nowadays. Whenever I'm playing online, they always go bishop e7 against me. It is very rare that anyone went bishop c5 against me. But bishop e7 is very common. So definitely a line to study very well. Make sure that you remember bishop e7 extremely well. And I think you will score a lot of points actually with this line. And here, yeah, actually doesn't matter what your opponent does here, you go d4. So basically, it's kind of a primo. You just go d4 no matter what. And here, white is already better. So definitely a very important line to cover bishop e7. It's very important to memorize it extremely well. And definitely one of the main moves to study. Okay, let's have a look at the last move, which is d6. Now it has been played a lot actually by other people, but to be honest, I did not face it that much in my online games. But it's also similar approach to bishop e7. In both cases, black is trying to make sure that they are safe. They choose the safe approach, and they make sure that, well, I don't want to take on e4 and get losing 10 moves. Yeah, so let's make a solid move, protecting e5, and yeah, just making sure that we are not doing anything crazy. Yeah, I think in my view it's a bit passive move, but it's I mean, according to the computers, it's still fine, but I don't think many people go d6 nowadays, at least not against me, but definitely still a healthy move. So d4. Again, now if knight e4, this has been covered with this move order, just to remind you. Yes, and it is the transposition, so be aware of that. So if d6, d4, now again, I think knight d4 is the best move, but since it's a transposition, we are going to cover something else, which is ed. And I believe this move has been played by Iranian Grandmaster Parham Maksudlu, who is 2700 plus, but this just leads to a bad position actually for black. So knight d4, bishop e7 is one move. Let's have a look at knight d4, knight d5. I think this is what Parham did against Kirill Shevchenko. Ed, knight d4, queen d4. So yeah, actually I mentioned in the comments that this position happened many times, but it's just very bad because now if you look at it, what black wants to do is they just want to develop this bishop, right? And to go castle. But g7 is hanging. So bishop e7 is not an option. And if it's not an option, white just wants to well, we have two ideas. One idea is to go bishop b5 check, trade these bishops. Oops, I'm sorry. Trade these bishops with c8, and then go short castle, and then give rook e1 check. Another idea is to go bishop e3, as I mentioned, and long castle. Now, if you ask me, I think practically it's better to go bishop b5 check. With like that's the idea, to keep the idea bishop b5 check. But like if black stops it, then you can simply develop the bishop and then go long castle and rook e1 check. But basically, the whole point of this line is that black is unable to develop properly. So bishop e7 is not an option, and if bishop e7 is not an option, it is really hard to understand how black is going to castle, because if black is trying to make a castle with this, and then long castle, then a7 is also hanging. So it is really hard to understand how black is going to play here. And also, other than that, let's make a move so we'll get out of these errors. Just the fact that we have a pawn on d5 and black's pawn is on d6, it already gives us more space. And as you can see, the queen here is dominating the whole position. It attacks a7 and also it attacks g7 at the same time. So it already makes black's play very uncomfortable. So definitely trading the knight is not good for black. It gives us a very healthy and good advantage, but it had been played a lot of times and by many good players actually. So I believe that bishop e7 is the best in this position. And I think that I had a game against Jeffrey Xiong in Armageddon, and I went knight b5 here. And eventually I got a good position. But I think it's better to go bishop b5. I studied it after my game, that it's probably better to go bishop b5, force the black to go bishop d7, and then go knight f5, and force black to give up the two bishops. Force black to give us two bishops advantage, because after bishop f5 ef we get two bishops advantage. So after castle we can just take on e7 and take, and black will get this horrible pawn structure again. So it's not an option. And if g7 is also hanging, so if black takes on d5, then knight g7, king f8, and bishop h6, very important intermezzo before taking the knight. Now black knight cannot move back to f6 because of knight e6 check, and we just captured the queen. And if the only move is king g8, so we just take it back, and we are up a piece with a strong attack. We are up a pawn with a very strong attack. So definitely forcing black to take on f5 with the bishop. E takes to f5, castles, and knight d5 is one option, and knight e5 is another option. Let's cover knight e5. The point of knight e5 is now that black wants to go c6 and d5 and get some good center actually. So knight f6, bishop f6, and f4, forcing the knight to go back, knight d7, and g4. The idea is very straightforward. We just want to push g5 and gain as much space as possible, and we force black to go back. And in that case, our attack is also strong, and black's bishop on e7 is extremely passive. So h6, stopping g5, and a4. Very strong idea. As you can see, the point of this is to bring the rook to g3. Really unique idea, but I think it's actually extremely strong because it's really hard to be black here. So c6 and bishop e2. This is very important move as well. Now, for many of you, you might think that bishop on d3 is better because it's protected, it feels safer to go here. But no, it's much more important to leave the square a3, g3 option for the rook, because once the bishop is on d3, it will stop us from that idea. So definitely bishop e2 is the way to go. d5, rook a3, knight c5. Again, black is trying to get the knight to e4, and it's actually a very good square for black knight. King h1, very strong. Again, we keep ideas to play rook g3 or rook h3, so it depends on a position. Now, after knight e4, obviously, we do not have option to go rook g3, but we have another option to go rook h3. And now, as you can see, our plan is to go bishop d3, and with the next move g5, forcing black to capture on g5, and then queen h5, and after queen h5, we just want to give this checkmate. So again, very complicated position, but I believe that it's much easier to be white, because again, black is the one who needs to defend this position actually, and I think it is extremely hard to be black here. So definitely in this line, it is very important to remember that after knight e4, you just have to go f4. I think this is quite easy actually. Knight d7 g4, again, very easy. You force your opponent to go h6, and after a4, and yeah, this is the moment to remember, because if you do not go a4, then it will be extremely hard to create any attack. While after a4, your rook is joining to the attack. Now, in this error, it shows only rook g3, because that's the main idea. But in this case, as you can see, the knight goes to e4, and the rook on g3 is useless because the knight on e4 attacks the rook, and also it protects g5 square. So we need something else, and that's what we need. We need the rook to go h3 in this case, with the idea to bishop d3. So definitely a4 is the most important move here to remember, because if you do not go a4, you will simply get a bad position, and after c6, d5, rook e8, if you do not create any attack, it's just not worth to play like this anymore. But after a4, you get a very good position, and I think very good chances to win the game. So another option is knight d5, which I don't think is quite logical, because here you should play queen d7, and you yourself get into a pin, which I don't really think is smart. I think knight d5 is by far more logical, and it also stronger. But yeah, I mean, it's a possibility, so we should cover it. c3, very classy move. It stops the future jumps of the knight to b4 and d4 in some in the future. Also, maybe it prepares in the future to go bishop d3, and also whenever black bishop goes to f6, as you can see, this strong pawn chain stops all the play of this black bishop. So it is a very classy move to make. Rook f8. Black does not really want to go bishop f6 for a moment because it doesn't do anything. And f4, very strong move again. The idea is to go bishop d2 and bring the last piece to the game. And again, we just want to do the g4, g5 attack. I think in this case, white has a really dominating position with no counterplay whatsoever. If you ask me, I would be more worried of knight e5. So definitely, I think you should pay more attention to knight e5 move than knight d5. And because here you do need to understand that if you do not go a4, then you can get really into a bad position, because as you can see, the knight here is very good placed by black, but in this case, we have this strong attacking idea. So this is how we compensate the fact that we gave this strong square to the knight. While after knight d5, I think it is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. You just have to recall that you have c3, and I think whatever you do, I mean, next move you should go f4, and I think after this point, whatever you do, you will have a good position. But it is better to focus on the ideas that are covered in the errors. So definitely very good position. I think white is very close to have winning advantage in this case, practically. So this was d6, and I believe that this was it about the e4, e5 chapter. So I'm definitely very happy that you've been with me this whole time. And I'm very excited to see a lot of new games that will be played maybe by you or by other viewers. So definitely, I'm more excited of this knight d5 move. This is the main position of the e4, e5 chapter. And I think that we've covered a lot of moves here, 5 moves. And those are knight e4 and knight d5 and bishop c5, bishop e7, and d6. I think in both cases, in all these 5 moves, we do have a lot of interesting ideas, and I think it's just very fresh. What is more important, that I'm sure that there are a lot of courses on Chessable that cover bishop b5 maybe here, d4, h3, maybe g3, a3, a lot of moves, but I don't think that knight d5 has been covered very deeply. And so definitely I'm very excited to share this fresh idea with you, and I'm really looking forward to see a lot of new games after my course, and I hope that you like it, and you will play it as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapters. Bye.